Yeah, everybody, welcome Sage. Sage is the OG geology streamer on Twitch. She's been streaming for what, like 9 years now. You had your like 9 year celebration. That's crazy.
September. Just like what? And I forget to celebrate my partnerversary, my streamverse, any of it.
Me too. They have little notifications now. I forgot until I was like, it is. So I wanted to ask you because I know that, but I wanted to. I know that you talked a little bit about this when you were on. You were a guest on Tofu's stream. Was it last week or the
Mhm.
week before?
I think it was the week before.
Okay. Yeah. So you were on Sage, or you were on Tofu stream a couple
Mhm.
weeks ago, and yeah, you were talking a little bit about what Twitch was like when you first started. But for anybody who wasn't there, would you mind kind of going over like what was it like to be one of the first science streamers on Twitch?
It was weird because at the time when I started Twitch, I was finishing up my master's in geology, and I was under the impression that gaming was the only content that was allowed. So when I came to Twitch, the only reason I came to Twitch was because I couldn't play scary games by myself. And I'd have my roommate and my best friend come and stay with me while I'd play these horror games. And they'd laugh and they'd laugh. They thought it was so hilarious. I'm like, why are you guys laughing? This is terrifying. Like, what is wrong with you? They're like, you're hilarious. Your reactions, like, I'd throw my controller, I'd like scream. I was it was ridiculous. I feel like I've sadly become somewhat desensitized to some of the horror, but I still do get pretty reactionary when I have a chance to play. But they're like, you need to stream on Twitch. You need to stream on Twitch, and I'm like, I knew Justine TV back in the day before it became Twitch, and I would watch, I don't know, various competitions and things, and I was like, I guess I could do this. I never thought about it. I never really watched any one in particular streamer. I'd always watched like competitive things between multiple groups. Oh, and that's not true. I did watch Day Nine TV, but I actually watched him predominantly on YouTube. But he was a Twitch streamer as well. So I kind of would catch him on Twitch, mostly on YouTube because I wouldn't always catch him on Twitch. So the content I want to see be put up on YouTube. But he was my biggest influence coming to Twitch and streaming. And his whole thing was learn to be a better gamer. That was like his shtick. And it still is. And he was into StarCraft, Hearthstone, very, very intelligent guy, very, very strategic. He was just such an excellent person too, just a great guy. Love to help people, love to help people learn how to be better at specific games or even have fun and do cheeky things. And my friends are like, you need to stream these horror games. It's hilarious. And I'm like, well, I do like Day Nine, and his stuff's pretty good, but he's really the only streamer I knew of at the time because I didn't really follow that many individuals. So I get on here and like we found out because I was like, I don't even remember like how many views I had my first year. It was like probably 3 people. I don't know. And turns out it was 10 people that we had. But here's the thing. This was back in 2014, 2015. So when you start, you would generally have a bigger likelihood of more people than you would starting today, for example.
Because there's just
um,
like less people on there.
there was just less streamers because I mean almost 10 years ago, like
The tech
having all this
just
the
isn't
webcams and the tech and
affordable.
stuff was not as affordable, and it was harder to understand. There wasn't a lot of information out there about it. So I mean, I got cheap things, believe me. I had a gaming laptop that I just happened to have because I like to game. I grew up PC gaming. So it's like I had this gaming laptop because when I was in my master's, I wanted to be able to game while I was literally in the SEM lab running samples. Because if you know the scanning electron microscopy lab, I know I know Melissa does very well. You zap these samples and you get these little, like, you sample like 45 points. You want 45 points of interest to give you some data. That takes like an hour 15 minutes maybe. And you're like just sitting there. I mean, I would sometimes go and do point counting on the other microscope, but sometimes I was doing that so much I needed breaks. So I would sit and play video games in between. And so I wanted to specifically, I saved up for a gaming laptop for that reason. And that thing became my Frankenstein of a Twitch streaming rig. I had an extra monitor I'd plug into it. I just had a headset with the audio jack. Like, it was bad. The audio was so bad. Video was really bad. Um, I think I just used the camera from my laptop, and slowly and surely people would watch, and I don't know, I had around like 30, 40 people watching my gaming streams back in the day, but I wasn't that serious about it. I didn't really have a plan or a goal. I was just having fun, and it was great. And the discoverability was so much easier back then, and you could pick different games and easily find new people. It was great. It was different. And that being said, the trolling was way worse. The trolling was way worse. It's kind of like if you've ever been on TikTok lives, it's like that. That's how Twitch used to be. It's like all the trolls. I don't know.
I don't understand TikTok Live. It's very confusing, and I feel the same way I do about the remote. Like, it's just a lot of effort that I'm just not willing to make.
Well, there's ways to like shortcut things, and they've now made it easier to go live. And I will answer any questions you have about that if you want, on or off stream. It doesn't matter to me. Happy to answer those questions. But that was, yeah, Twitch early days. There were a lot of trolls, and some of those trolls were savages. Like they'd really like they would find your Facebook. Unfortunately, or no, fortunately, my Facebook's name isn't real, and neither is
Mm-hmm.
the URL. The URL I changed as well, so it doesn't have my name in it.
Nice.
So anytime they'd make a fake account using my Facebook, it wasn't a real name, and I just sit there laughing like idiots. And they thought they got one on me. And but no, sometimes they were brutal about you, what you look like physically, like your intelligence, like because I did have a big poster of geology in my background of California, and so people would ask, and we would talk geology a lot, and I wanted to talk about it more, but I was like, "Oh, I can't do this," and I would kind of get nervous if we talked too long about it. I was like, "Oh no, my I better start gaming more." And like a year or two into streaming, I saw an astronomer, or they're not an astronomer, they're a um they have a, I don't know, bachelor, they're liberal arts or something, and they do astronomy streams, or they used to, I think. And I saw them on the front page, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, we can do educational content. I did not know this." And so, pretty much then and there, I started doing geology content. And I also got a lot of trolling then because, being a woman and talking about science, especially earlier on in Twitch, was mind boggling for some people. And so that was an interesting thing. But I had an epic moderation team. I still do to this day, and we dealt with it as it came. And honestly, I think I grew from it. I'm really glad that, in a way, I'm glad I had to deal with all that, because I really grew from it, and I know how to handle that kind of stuff now. I kind of miss old Twitch, but at the same time I don't, because there were so many things that were awful. I don't like some of the new things they've implemented and changed. I don't really like how they push the streams out today. Um, but I do like other things that have changed. So it just depends. Like Twitch is though it's like it's a dynamic platform that's ever changing, that's always going to be changing, and I kind of just learned to go with the flow now. Like there's no reason to be angry or not angry at it. Just accept it. Be like, well, the platform's going to change. It's not going to be like this forever. Something I love may happen, and be like, okay, well, this thing I love may not be around forever, so just enjoy it while I can. Um, this thing I don't like will probably get removed because it's, as we call it, twitchy or broken. I don't know. And I won't say the last thing I have to say about Twitch and live streaming in general is that I did not learn to love Twitch as much as I love it now until I started live streaming on TikTok.
Good. I'm glad. I'm
And like it's
glad.
funny, like I've always loved Twitch, but it didn't like I kind of, I don't know, you get like, oh, the grass is always greener kind of feeling, or oh, this could be so much better if they just did this, this, and this, and then you go somewhere else. And they've only been doing lives for like 2 years, and you're like, oh, their UI is terrible. Oh my god, their live studio's garbage. Oh no, the like the chat is tiny. You can't see any, like the gifs and the chat are all kind of mixed up in this tiny little box. It's like, what?
It's just too
Okay,
much. It's too much. I don't. It's just too much. It's too
it's too much,
much.
and it's not enough at the same time for it to be functional yet,
Yeah.
in my
It's
opinion.
just. It's.
It's
I'm not worth it. Mm-mm.
I understand it. I know what to do, and it's easy for me to do it now. It's just they're it's like okay, the only negative thing there's lots of negative things I could say about TikTok, but the one I'll say is their moderation in terms of their TOS is written so vaguely that you could get banned at any time for any reason for anything without warning, and they don't have to say a thing.
I've heard
And
you.
that's
Yeah, I've
that.
heard something happen. I heard something happened, and it was just like not a thing. That
Oh, me?
yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah. It was just I've heard that from a lot of people that
Yep.
are. It's just like not a thing.
I've
Also,
been restricted and stuff, yeah.
yeah. It's a lot of effort for in I'm just not as comfortable on TikTok. I just don't
I
care
don't
for
blame
it.
you. I've done a lot of work to figure it out. Like I said, if you ever like want like all the kind of shortcuts and just so you, like just like here's what you just need to do, fast track. I'm happy to help you with that because I really want to see more people doing education on that platform because now that I've actually started to do it, I'm starting to curate a small community that actually are like, "What? There's
Good.
education here?"
Good.
So, I think
That's
if we could,
great.
the more educators I can, of course, convince to, I'm going to, and any help I can be to help um make that happen, I'd be happy to help. And then you can kind of do it at the same time so you don't have to pay as much attention to the other if you want. Oh my god.
Nah.
No, Dr. Dur.
Yeah, chat's been rioting. And Draken, thank you so much. I really appreciate the bits. I genuinely do. And the gift subs. Welcome everybody. I've been like really behind on chat because I've been like
Oh,
listening
go
to,
ahead. Catch up,
been
catch up.
listening to you. No, what you have to say is very valuable, and as is your time as well.
I tend to ramble, so
As
you
is
can always
everybody's
say, "Hey, hey,
time.
hey."
Um,
Yes.
but but given that there was a large cheer, would you please share your favorite Cinnabar recipe, Sage?
My favorite Cinnabar recipe is to keep the Cinnabar as is because it's nature's art and enjoy it with your eyeballs from afar. Mmm, delicious.
Yeah. Oh
I mean, technically,
gosh.
Jolie and Ralph from Mindat said you could eat Cinnabar and it's not soluble in your stomach acid and you would just poop it out. That's what he said. Jolie and Ralph from Mindat, founder of Mindat, said that. And it's on a YouTube video of an interview I have with him.
Yeah, as a about to be professor of mineralogy, I'm gonna have to still advise against that because I don't want any of my
I was waiting for that.
students.
No, I was waiting.
I don't
No,
want
please don't eat Cinnabar.
I don't want any
Please
of my
don't eat Cinnabar.
students to be like,
No, yeah, please don't eat Cinnabar. Please don't lick Cinnabar. That was one person's opinion. All right.
yeah, don't do it. It's got arsenic. We would rather not have
Mercury.
or mercury. Yeah, sorry, mercury.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, it's mercury sulfide.
Mm-hmm.
What's the arsenosulfides?
Like probably Cinnabar and Orpiment.
Oh, it's the orpiment realgar. You're right. You're right.
Realgar.
You're
Right,
right.
right. Not
Yeah,
Cinnabar. Realgar and Orpiment, yeah.
they're both red. It's the same. They're both red. That's the same. Me and Drake and we are taking questions. I have a redeem for questions in the channel points that'll put it up, but and thank you to Tofu for that amazing idea also.
Oh, I need to set that up, actually.
Yeah, it's really good. Can you eat salt? Yes, you can eat salt. Table salt is a mineral. It's just halite. It's a mineral. It's totally normal. If you buy coarse salt, you can actually like look at it with a microscope and see that they're teeny tiny little cubes. It's just the normal salt. They just like clean it basically. Take all the germs and stuff out of it because it comes from the ground. Uh,
Except for the Himalayan pink salt where they leave the bacteria in there, thus it's pink.
yeah, it would
Well, I mean,
not.
it's safe to eat, though. It's safe to eat.
Yeah, I wouldn't. We have an ad about to run, so I don't want to do anything during ads, but I will ask you guys to please hang out if you don't mind, and we will not do any serious discussions for you love the chemical formants for orpiment realgar because it's just ass. Mohawkite has arsenic in it. Oh, I did not know that. Thank you so much, Dr. Magnified. Welcome.
Tiny, tiny sample of it.
We have one Ask a Science question. Daniel, thank you. What is your favorite rock to look at, Sage?
You know, I had a dream about banded iron formations last night, so I'm gonna say banded iron formations. I
So
mean,
for people who
I
don't
don't.
know what that is, what is a banded iron formation?
So banded iron formations are the rock that literally look like bands of brick red and kind of a grayish metallic.
I have a screen. If you'd like, I have a Will it do that? Yeah, it'll. If you want to do a screen share, it will let you screen share if you're interested. You don't have to.
See if I don't know if I have any pictures of one. I have one. Oh, it's not unpacked. Captain Paul gave me a really beautiful sample. Um oh
Okay.
my god, it's not
No,
unpacked.
no
But
pressure, no rush, dude. No worries. Don't worry about it.
I'm trying to think if that's actually my favorite. It is. It represents the great oxygenation event. So basically when the atmosphere filled with oxygen on the planet, it was able to bond with iron, oxidizing iron and creating a mineral called hematite. And I don't know, is there some magmatite in there too? Magnetite in there too?
I think it's hematite and chert.
Hematite and chert. Okay. So I thought all okay.
Because hematite is straight Fe2O3.
Yeah,
Magnetite
I
has
didn't.
both ferrous and ferric iron in it, which is why it's
Yeah,
magnetic. So
right.
the oxidation would completely oxidize everything to ferric
I
iron.
just didn't know there was chert in there.
Yeah, that's what the black is.
I don't remember black. I remember gray, silver, and red.
Hematite, jasp. Oh, what's jaspilite? Deep Earth.
Jaspilite? That's interesting. Um, People are saying ads.
Okay.
Oh, that's okay,
Okay.
right? So,
Oh, it's
jaspilite
an
bands.
iron-rich rock. It's formed similar to chert. Uh,
Interesting.
oh, I had no idea.
So
Ah.
I wonder because most of the chart on Earth is formed on the seafloor. So I wonder if it's due to silicious,
Well, yeah,
silicious ooze on the seafloor, or is it nodular? It has to be the seafloor chert, not nodular chert.
yeah. No, it's regular, just seafloor chert. Um,
I mean, that makes the most sense. If otherwise, it wouldn't be so vast and broad.
yeah, well, and the only so the from my understanding, the reason why we have the alternating bands is like you reach just saturation. You know, it's like
Yeah.
you just super saturate it, and so um, if it's you said jaspilite, oh, you can get a carbonite biff as well. I had no idea, Captain Paul.
We have to look into this.
Oh, the reddish bands are the jaspilite. The black is the hematite. I'm incorrect. I apologize. Okay, so hematite, jaspilite bands. And the hematite is like the black to silver. The red is
Mm-hmm.
jaspilite. I was very, very wrong. I had it
We
backwards.
both learned something today, and I love
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. Thank you guys so
Thank you.
much.
Thank you. That was amazing. I'm glad that I brought that up because I didn't know one that you could get a carbonate biff,
Yeah.
carbonate banded iron formation, and I didn't know that the jaspilite made up the reddish portion,
Yeah.
the reddish brown portion.
So thank you guys so
And
much
I
for
know you did.
hanging out through the ads. We were talking to give you guys a recap. We were talking about what is a banded iron formation, and we've got a couple of also geologists in chat, very expert geologists in chat. And Sage and I both totally learned something. So jaspilite, if you look at a banded iron formation, um, I don't know that I can share my it won't do what
I
which
can
will you put
I
it
can do
up?
it on my OBS virtual camera. Share banded iron formation.
I think if you just oh here we go. Ooh, I figured it out. I figured it out. I
So I think I can
figured it
go
out.
to. Okay, cool. Because I could go to like my learning scene and show whatever.
There's like a screen share and I can share it. There we
Perfect.
go.
Oh, that's lovely. Yes.
Is it showing up?
Yeah, it's
Okay,
beautiful.
cool. So yeah, so we have this banded iron formation, and the red is jaspilite, which is an iron-rich chert, the silver is hematite, and so sometimes it's black, sometimes it's silver, sometimes it's a shade of gray. It just depends on the flavor of hematite that you end up with, and sometimes hematite can also be red. And so I thought
Hmm.
originally I thought that the black was the chert and the red was the hematite, but I
Right?
had
I
no
thought, yeah, I thought
idea.
I honestly thought they were both just types of hematite because you get both colors in hematite that way. I never thought about it. I never thought that deep into banded iron formations before, and I'm so glad I learned this today.
Yeah, it's really
It's like
cool.
another little segment of geology that I've got uncovered now.
Yeah. So I guess the chert would form, and then it's really iron rich
Yeah.
because it's got iron 2 plus, because during periods of no oxygen you don't have anything to rust
Bond with it.
the
Yeah.
iron, if you will.
Yeah.
So you end up with like a 2 plus iron, and that is your red iron rich chert,
And
because
then you've
it's,
got the oxygen.
well, it's just not soluble in the, it's like it's still soluble in the water, so it ends up forming in the chert. But
Hmm.
iron 3 plus, the ferric iron. I always have to say ferrous to ferric because I never remember the
Hmm.
names with the charge. The iron 3 plus, the ferric iron, that is not soluble in water. So
Hmm.
if you can build up enough oxygen in your environment to mm, like have enough oxygen to take that iron and take it from a 2 plus to a 3 plus, the iron is no longer soluble in water and it has to bond with something, so it bonds with the oxygen in water and you get big layers of hematite forming. Sorry.
Yeah. No, that's great.
Sorry, thank you, Paul. You're seeing a lava pool. You're seeing a lava pool. You're not seeing the screen? I'm so sorry. Okay, I don't understand what's happening.
Maybe refresh.
Well, shoot.
Am I?
Yeah, I'm not sure. It's very weird. Okay, let's try. Are you guys. What about that? I don't know what is. Oh, it wasn't on stream. I have to say push. Okay, well.
Oh, the banded iron formation wasn't showing.
Yeah, I am just being very dumb right now.
You're not dumb. It's still a lot going on.
Share. Yes. Okay. Show on stream. All right. Is it showing now, guys? It looks like it on my OBS. Sweet. Okay. Um. So yes, this is the banded iron formation. I'm so sorry, y'all. I genuinely thought that it was up. Pool is back. Yes. Yes. Cool. Okay. Um. So yes, here's we have our sage. Since I already went through, would you mind? Because I know you're an expert geologist and a wonderful teacher.
Oh gosh, sure. Basically, this is called a banded iron formation, and these formations came about. I want to say it was a 2 billion years ago. I want to say is the Great Oxygenation Event, or is it 2.5 billion? So 2 or 2.5 billion years ago.
I'm a tap for
And
help in the chat.
yeah, please, because I can't remember the exact date. Anyway, the atmosphere and the oceans eventually filled enough with oxygen. First the oceans, and then it saturated enough the ocean such that oxygen started filling the atmosphere, and thus when there was enough oxygen, it likes to bond to different things called, well, oxidation. And turns out there's iron, tons of iron around, and the iron bonded with the oxygen, causing a mineral called hematite to form, which is an iron oxide. And what you see in the formation, those silvery gray bands that are very folded, those are the hematite layers. The other layers, the red layers, are chert layers, which form from plankton on the top of the sea. They die. They have silica-rich skeletons. They litter the seafloor. Those silica-rich skeletons turn into a silicious ooze at the bottom of the seafloor. This is like 4 kilometers at depth below the ocean, maybe 4.5 kilometers at depth below the ocean, and where they collect on what's called the big flat broad plains of the ocean, not the trenches, not the ridges, just big fat broad plains we call abyssal plains. And the silicious ooze mixes with that iron, and it starts to eventually, once it's able to solidify and form a rock called chert that is the red stuff that we're looking at. And I believe this particular chert has a name, right?
Jaspolite.
Jaspolite?
Jaspolite.
Jaspolite. So I don't know if
JAS. Let me see. Here is the. I'll put this.
Jaspolite. Okay.
Yeah, I'll put this in chat.
Perfect. So that's what those bands represent.
It's from your town. That's so cool, Dr. Magnify it.
So it represents basically when oxygen started to fill our oceans and then our atmospheres, such that these rocks are able to form. So these rocks are evidence of that time.
That's so cool. Thank you. I'm sorry I messed up the on the screen sharing. The screen sharing instead.
I'm such a derp. I mess things up all the time. I just don't even. I'm just like, whatever, it happens.
It's like,
Delicious booze.
This delicious booze. We did have maybe they were rubber bands in disguise. No, they're around. Push the buttons. What? We did have a question. So, Hyperlisk would love to hear about some high quality H2O, and I know I would too.
I would love to talk about that.
All right.
So, I guess I should define what high quality H2O is. High quality H2O or water is water that is drinkable or usable for humans and animals, such that we don't get sick or contaminated by various contaminants like, well, arsenic. We brought up arsenic earlier, and that's a naturally occurring contaminant. It could theoretically be a man-made contaminant if it was used in something industrially and then spilled somewhere, but it is a naturally occurring contaminant. For example, it occurs in the Sierra Nevada, occurs in the Himalayas.
Why?
Both of those. Why do they occur in those mountains?
Yeah,
that's a good question. But I don't have. I mean, because they're igneous rock, and arsenic forms in minerals that are in igneous rock. Because, well, here's with magma chambers, and please correct me if I'm wrong. You're the volcano.
No, you're totally you're totally right. You're totally right. I'm like, yeah.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, no, okay, you're so right.
So it's just like they're all chemically very different, and each magma chamber could have a little more arsenic, or this other one could have a little more mercury, or this other one could have a little more titanium, or et cetera, et cetera. I mean, there's the top 8 most common elements on the Earth's crust and mantle, but
well, you get just like places where you get enough of it to mine. That's what I was thinking of. Was like, because in the Sierras there's those mines.
Right, and they used to mine cinnabar in California in the Coast Ranges too, for separating gold ore from other rock, other stuff. So that's why cinnabar was mined in the coast. In fact, this is actually there's water contamination in the coastal region of California near, starts with the C. I can't remember the name. It doesn't matter. It's SoCal area, but it's north of Santa Barbara, south of the Bay Area. So it's a pretty big swath of land, I know. But it's oh gosh, the name is eluding me. But anyway, they mine for cinnabar, which is a mercury sulfide, specifically for the mercury, because the mercury in that mineral was able to be used to separate gold ore from other rocks during the gold rush. And they didn't know that it was a contaminant at the time. So that was a thing. So basically, potable water is the best way to put what high quality water is. High quality water is something that is drinkable, so that it follows rules and regulations, standards set by WHO, standards set by different nations and even territories and states, such that, okay, this is the list of all these contaminants and the amount of this contaminant you can have in a body of water that is still considered drinkable and safe to drink. And sometimes those things change. So arsenic used to be at 50 parts per million. That was safe to drink. Billion or million, I can't remember. You have to fact check that if it's billion or million. And it's now been lowered more recently to, I think it was 5 or 10. But not all countries observe that. So Bangladesh, for example, doesn't observe that. They still go by the 50, but they have huge arsenic issues. So there's a whole tangent I could go down.
That's terrifying. That's
Hmm.
terrifying. Do you think
Yeah,
that?
that's one of the. Oh, go
Oh,
ahead.
no, no.
That's just one of the things. If you guys, I'll end up probably mentioning as an example is Bangladesh, because of their water issues, and there's a small story behind that country that kind of just it showcases a natural form of contamination, but it also shows steps being taken to try to mitigate that contamination.
Oh, good. Good. That's
Yeah,
nice.
yeah,
That's at least good. Something in the positive
hmm,
direction.
yeah.
So,
And okay,
sorry. I was gonna
no, no, no.
ask. I know, but for people who don't, and people who don't have a geology background, is it normal to? So it is normal. Would you agree that it is normal to have some sort of like natural contamination just from the rocks, or is this all man made contamination? And if
It
so,
is
like
complete.
what percentage would you, or can you attribute like a percentage or like a more or less to natural versus man made?
I can't personally say a percentage without just making an educated guess, and even then I don't want to make that educated guess without more information, more stats, because I only know certain locations. I don't know every place globally. Um, and that would take a little bit more research. But basically, I'm sorry, can you reiterate your question one more time? My
Yeah,
brain.
sorry, I didn't explain it very well. So I was asking like, uh, I, do you think that, I guess a better way to phrase it is, or ask is, do you think that a majority of contamination
Right.
for water sources, and talking about like mineral contamination here,
Mineral
like
contamination
like
specifically.
when you were talking about the
Okay.
arsenic and stuff like that, is that more often than not, will that be naturally occurring contamination, or will it be because of some type of human activity?
I'd say both. Regardless if we say if it's just mineral contamination or not, I'd say, well, if we just look at minerals specifically from, let's say, mining in the Sierras, Appalachians, Himalayas, things like that, any kind of mountain range where you're mining minerals, um, if there's mining involved, you could have human caused contamination. But if there's just those minerals and elements in the rock itself through processes, so the rock over time, especially the taller the rock, the more it's going to be broken up by atmospheric processes, by geologic processes, biologic processes. So basically, the Earth kind of wants to essentially be as smooth as possible, but it's kind of impossible because tectonics are always making mountains and making basins and making mountains and making basins and trenches. We've got all these differences in height going along the planet, but the tallest peaks undergo a lot of breaking through chemistry or chemicals, through biology, through a lot of things. They break up, and then those broken up pieces get transported elsewhere, and then those broken up pieces become even further broken up into their mineral constituents, and then those minerals can actually dissolve into their elemental constituents. So, for example, cinnabar being mercury and sulfur would then contaminate the water, and that can absolutely be naturally occurring. And that process is weathering and erosion. So weathering is the breakup of the rock, erosion is the transportation of the rock, and then through that erosion you also get the further breakdown, more weathering and erosion of the material, because it doesn't just break into one chunk. It continues to break up and break up and break up as let's say it travels down a river, and through that process, all that energy in the water, it's going to break those things up and eventually allow some of them to dissolve. So a lot of it can be naturally occurring. And again, if you've got mining going on, maybe it expedites that process. So you've already got the weathering and erosion, and now you've got people taking and exposing even more of those minerals and maybe smashing them apart, dumping them into tailing piles, which are piles that the mine just kind of creates for the sake of being concise. And of course, all that water, any kind of rain that leaches through those exposed new minerals that are, exposed and dumped, those will continuously leach in and contaminate if precautions were not taken. And unfortunately, up until, I don't know, recently, relatively recently at least, the last 100 years or so, we really didn't worry much about these kinds of things,
Mm.
except for maybe bacterial things we were worried about. We knew how to take care of certain things and have decent water, but we didn't understand a lot of contaminants at the
That
time.
that's a good transition. And Paul pointed out, that like you said, these things can be exacerbated by human activities
Oh,
like
yes,
improper
exactly.
mining. So I'm really glad that he made that point and you brought it up. But that's a good transition. Dr. Mignifite suggested that we should define contamination. And I guess, you said we were talking about mineral contamination and you just brought up bacterial. What kinds of contamination are there in the water that we have available to us to drink?
Well, there's oh gosh, how okay. There's the L Napples and D Napples. I think that's too much. I
What?
think yeah. So there's two kinds of contaminants. There's some that essentially float and some that sink,
Oh,
and it depends on what. In fact, this let me
you might be able to screen share.
because I just want to make sure I remember not every example, but get the um just looking for was too specific.
Oh, no worries. No worries. My husband went and procured a breakfast burrito when I was in the shower before stream, so I'm going to eat the pieces of it very
Oh, go
quietly.
for it. Oh, I eat all the time and do whatever. I try to just maintain
I
my
don't.
healthiness. It's been my therapist yells at me. She's like, and my trainer, whom I actually I'm not gonna be seeing anymore. All right, so this isn't exactly the categorization that I wanted, but if you get into hydrogeology, they get more into what kind of contaminants do what, and there's a group of contaminants that are they tend to float, and there's certain contaminants that tend to sink, and because of those differences, they have to treat them differently when it comes to reclamation, which means cleaning up. So when they clean up these sources, it depends on what kind of contaminant it is, regardless if it's natural or not. If a human has made it or not, or if it's naturally put into the water, they still fit into these various things. So one of the big ones, of course, I think a lot of people know this, is fertilizers and pesticides, chemicals that have been applied to the land near any water sources. Uh, but that doesn't just mean like near a stream or a lake. That also means, are you on top of a type of rock or ground that allows water to sink into, kind of like a sponge? So it has to be, which means it's permeous and um, it has porosity and permeability, such that the water can actually sink through these spaces that are interconnected. The spaces are the pore spaces. The interconnectedness is the permeability. So if that water can sink into the ground and sink into the water table, you can contaminate the water table itself, which also flows and can feed streams and lakes and um, flow to other locations. So fertilizers, pesticides are a big one. Um, Big farms with with animals specifically, um, their manure can
Fecal
become a
coliform
contaminant.
bacteria.
Yep. Uh, some manufacturing operations and industrial operations can produce things. For example, if you aren't familiar with Hinckley, California, near Barstow, the movie Erin Brockovich. I know it's an old movie, but it's really good. And Erin Brockovich is an actual woman who does fight for water rights, and
Starring Julia Roberts. Starring Julia
yeah, she's starring.
Roberts.
She is amazing, and they found that hexavalent chromium was being dumped irresponsibly by PG&E nearby, just dumped into the ground, into the water in the ground. They didn't care, and of course the tenants of the folks of Hinckley, their children started getting cancer, leukemia. Their parents started getting cancer, their lesions, all sorts of diseases and weird things that were happening. They eventually, because of Aaron Brockovich, were able to sue PG&E. I hope that they got enough to really cover everything that was happening to all those poor folks that lived in that town. But that's a manufacturing and then industrial. That's an example of something that can happen industrially. No, not every company is doing that. That's not a common practice, especially with today's um,
Yeah,
laws in
MSHA
place.
doesn't allow for that anymore.
No, no. And there are companies that actually regulate and test water and make sure companies are doing what they're supposed to be doing. You could have sewer overflows during floods. Flooding can absolutely cause contamination, especially if you're carrying things that aren't normally carried. Say a river overflows, it starts to take over, I don't know, maybe into I hope this isn't the situation. I hope a dump isn't built within a flood zone of a river, but if it is, that could potentially, become a contaminant. Sewers overflowing during floods are another source of contaminant. Stormwater, flooding water, wildlife theoretically can be a source of contamination. Rocks and soil that just naturally have the chemicals we've talked about, like arsenic, radon. Radon is often in a rock called shale, and it is um, it's very common in the East Coast, and oftentimes basements will have radon detectors. Uranium, uh, arsenic, mercury. I mean, there a chromium, naturally occurring chromium. So here's an example: hexavalent chromium was dumped by PG&E near Hinkley, whereas in Oregon there was a project one of my hydrology professors worked on, where naturally occurring chromium from the mountains nearby in southern Oregon were contaminating groundwater. So there's an example of both a man-made contaminant versus a naturally made contaminant that are both chromium.
Well, I think it's good to discuss like all of the things
Mm-hmm.
that could happen, and also important to make sure to acknowledge differences too.
Right,
You know.
right. I mean, you get breaks in oil and gas, especially oil pipelines breaking can contaminate water. Unfortunately, that's why they have to be very careful as to where they drill, how they drill, what they drill into, making sure that the uh, reservoirs they're drilling from are brackish. What I mean by that is the it's so saline that it's not drinkable, so that when they pump out that oil, there's inevitably going to be water pumped out with it. It's that water isn't usable, it's not potable. um uh,
What about
Cracks and yeah, sorry.
microplastics? No, 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 it's okay. Somebody asked.
That
Neil talked about microplastics. They said one of the most scary water contaminants are microplastics because we know so little about the consequences long term.
right.
And
And
also,
that's why I don't.
if you've
Oh, go ahead.
asked a question, we're gonna set aside some time in a little bit
And
to
actually,
do that specifically.
I'm gonna just really quickly kind of take some notes here on some of those questions, because
Sure.
microplastics isn't one I've actually. And oh, the other one are pharmaceuticals. Oh, come on.
Mm-hmm. I know I can tell you. So I did a short stint at the conservation district, um, working on a poop fecal coliform bacteria campaign. So that's the only reason I know about that, the manure aspect. And what we found is that the watersheds up here in Vancouver, Washington, where I live, were tested for fecal coliform bacteria because there's a lot of ag around here, and they found hot spots in the watersheds and the parts of the rivers right where the ag is most predominant, which is what you would
Yep.
expect. But you can also test the different species of fecal coliform bacteria have different like DNA depending on the different types of animals they reside in. So you can tell speciation, like what type of animal are these high concentrations of poop bacteria coming from, and kind of attribute it
Wow.
out. Regular wildlife usually are not an issue because they're in naturally occurring abundances as they have been throughout their whole species lifespan. It's they aren't as populous as would be needed,
Mm-mm.
but
No, they're
dogs.
not like confined to a tiny space like cattle are.
Right, so livestock and dogs, like
Oh,
dog poop,
dogs?
even oh yeah, dog poop, anything canine. Canine. So the reason why you don't make manure out of poop, like human poop or dog poop, It's typically not advised because you need to decompose it at a much higher temperature to kill the different types of bacteria that are in meat-eating organisms versus plant-eating organisms. So you need to do a completely different composting mechanism. So at least here,
Totally not typing this because I'm so interested.
No, it's okay. I can talk about this. I can like refer you to a whole bunch of like resources on this. I literally only know about fecal coliform bacteria, and that is it. Um, but like, yeah, the a lot of the animal contamination for the poop is livestock and then dogs, and so like even you don't want to have dog poop hanging out in your backyard. Usually groundwater percolation and will take out all the bacteria because it's going to take how long does it take to filter groundwater through?
Oh gosh, it depends. It depends on the aquifer, but it takes quite a while. I wish that I had a time range. In fact, that's something I need to.
Well, I can while you're looking that up, we've got ads going, so I don't want to like
Okay.
go too much. But yeah, well and septic was one around here, which is why it's important to keep up your septic. But yeah, the dog poop, you want to clean your dog poop up from the yard because a lot of the bacteria will wash off into surface waters. So it's the surface water runoff from the poop bacteria that's the problem, not so much in the groundwater. We're in ads.
You do like 3 minutes per hour or something?
Yeah.
That's what I do.
Yeah. I break it up into like 1.5 minutes because that's a lot easier to sit through than 3 minutes.
See, what I do, because my doctor and my trainer like, you need to get up every hour and just stretch, like whatever.
Oh, you do a block.
So I do a block. I do 3 minutes, and then I run my break, so nobody misses anything. And then I just get up and I stretch. Maybe I'll go outside and just kind of reset my brain. Do something healthy.
Yeah.
I do a little like stretchy yoga stuff.
Eat a burrito.
Get food, get water. I feel it's just, I don't know. I know like breaks on jobs, it's usually like every 2 hours, but I'm just listening to my doctor, so
yeah. You have to work with your body. Do you need to take a break? Would you like to take a break? Okay. If you would like to take a break, please let me know, and I'm happy to pause and.
I will. Thank you.
Run some ads.
I appreciate that a lot, and I'm the same way with anybody on my channel.
Okay.
Infiltration of groundwater. Infiltration is what I'm looking for, not groundwater flow, because that's different.
Yeah. So we're back from ads. We were talking about how like when water can flow through the ground and go through all like the pore spaces, it cleans the water. It cleans all the bacteria and stuff out of the water. Like rock's pretty powerful at removing contaminants, unless the rocks are the contaminants. And then you have a problem.
And
but how long, Sage, does it take to put groundwater? Like how long does it take for groundwater to get all the way through and back into the reservoir where we can use, or the aquifer where we can use it?
So it depends on the depth of the water table to the surface. So if you have a really deep water table, it's going to take a longer time. By that I mean there's more dry rock to seep through. There's also the trouble of what soil type you have. And I don't generally go into soil types. I don't know them offhand. But I will tell you that the sandier a soil is, which means, because soil is organic material, air, water, and rock. So the rock component is a good like 55% of soil. It's a really big chunk. It's 45 to 55% of it. So the sandier, the bigger those rock chunks, the easier and faster that water is going to flow through in millimeters per hour. So if it's a sandier type substrate, and I know it's kind of like there was a meme with these names going on, but if it's a sandy loam, it's going to infiltrate at about 20 to 30 millimeters an hour. Now there's
millimeter. You mean
millimeters an hour.
Hang on.
Millimeters an hour.
You mean
the tiny things in a centimeter?
You mean like one of these?
Yeah.
In an hour?
Uh-huh.
That's so
10, 20,
slow.
well, 20 to 30 millimeters an hour would be 2 to 3 centimeters an hour, right?
Yeah, okay.
So,
Oh,
so two
but
to three
that's still
centimeters
like
an hour
that's
for,
that
right,
much in the ground an
right, like
hour.
an hour. Okay, so then there's loam, which is a little less sandy. That's 10 to 20 millimeters an hour. And then it gets even worse with clay. When you get the addition of clay, the finest material of rock you can have, then it gets like 5 to 10 down to 1 to 5. So clay can really be it could be a flood maker. If you get a torrential rainfall in an area that's covered in clay, that clay does not allow much infiltration very quickly. So you're going to get a lot of flash flooding, or a lot of flooding that just seeps up very quickly out of seemingly nowhere. So it depends on the soil type, and that soil horizon can be. The soil horizons are very, very deep. I don't know, maybe 5 to 10 meters at depth, depending, because arid environments tend to have smaller soil horizons, and temperate or tropical soil horizons tend to be a little more well developed, with a lot more going on. And that's about as much as I want to get into the soil horizon. So you have to imagine there's the soil horizon through which it infiltrates, and then it has to infiltrate through the rock. Now, is that rock, how far is it to the top of that water table? Once it reaches the actual groundwater travels about 15 meters a day on average. So groundwater itself, once it's actually in the pool of groundwater, and don't, I mean, I hate to say the word pool, because groundwater isn't just this big pool underwater, this big cavern of water. It's groundwater exists in between all these pieces of rock. And you can imagine they're actually kind of more like sand-sized pieces of rock, or sometimes smaller, sometimes a little bigger, sometimes smaller. But that's where our water exists when we talk about groundwater. It doesn't exist in big pools, it exists in these tiny spaces that are interconnected. Now, if they weren't
Oh.
interconnected, well, we couldn't get the water out, but they are. So we are able to use these, and we call these banks of groundwater, like individually, because we can, um, map them individually. We call them, aquifers. And so that's where our water, our groundwater comes from. And that's, groundwater is our most abundant resource of fresh water, of course, aside from glacial ice, which we aren't actively melting to drink. So,
It's melting, but not on purpose
not,
for that
no, it's,
reason.
no. And so groundwater is our biggest resource. So it takes forever to replenish. So you have to consider going through the soil horizon. Then you have to consider how much how much distance is there from the soil horizon to the top of the water table in the rock, because some places have a water table that are at the surface, even into the soil horizon. And sometimes that water table is, I don't know, a good 50 feet below the surface. And so that is a big component of how fast that water is going to travel. And again, once it reaches the groundwater table, groundwater actually does flow. And you can determine the direction of flow just using 3 wells, um, for example. But
Really?
ground,
How do you do that? Sorry, it's been
uh,
forever. I haven't taken
I'm trying
hydro
to.
since like undergrad.
No, it's been a long time
This
since
is
I've
so
done this.
interesting.
It's been over like 12 years since I've done this project. But I remember you get, yeah, it's based on the depths of the water table, because gravity, it flows with gravity. So it flows from high to low elevation.
Okay.
So
Okay.
groundwater always flows from high to low elevation. So it's a pretty simple thing to do if you just get the elevations of those water tables, or of those, assuming nothing else is going around, like infiltrating nearby and maybe offsetting the height of that water table, relative to the others, if that makes sense.
Very cool. I did not know that. That's very cool.
I mean, when you get into higher levels of hydrogeology, it's probably much more complex than just using 3 wells. Just like triangulating an earthquake is much more complex than using 3 seismic stations.
Well, we're not hydrogeologists now, are we?
No.
No, we're not.
Technically, my bachelor's, could have said hydrogeology, but I didn't want to get pigeonholed in anything. So I'm like, can I just say geology? I actually had them change it to just geology.
I mean, I think that's a good plan. We've had a lot of discussion about like groundwater, like drinking water quality in chat. Like, Hybris said They've had a concern about water and contamination since they were a kid, and they grew up on a farmhouse in the middle of the countryside, surrounded by many farms and fields. Had well
Mm-hmm.
water that was often super nasty, and their dad would
Yeah.
bleach it, but it was only better for a little bit. Is that common? Do you know?
In agricultural sites like that, absolutely, because you're dealing with, you're probably, I'm guessing you're on a well, um, and that the other farms are on wells that are feeding their whatever, their crops, their um, animals, and all that water. Let's say they're using these big sprinklers, right? These big sprinklers are super inefficient, and farmers shouldn't be using these anymore. If they are, I I understand the smaller family farms aren't the ones that I'm really like concerned with. It's these bigger billionaire farms that I'm like, please don't be using these inefficient sprinklers, because drip irrigation is the way to go to save the most water with farming. It's just, if you're a smaller family farm, are you going to be able to afford that? So I do think government needs to step in and be like, hey, we're going to help you guys. But that's my opinion on that. But let's say you got those big sprinklers that are just shooting water out in the atmosphere. Some of it makes it on the plants. And so a lot of that ends up as runoff, and it just kind of trickles down. It kind of floods the dirt a little bit, and it runs off, and it collects pesticides, it collects manure, it collects uh, anything, any kind of what was it called, what do you call it, coliform,
Fecal coliform
fecal
bacteria.
bacteria from any livestock, and it could then potentially contaminate that water source that you are actually drawing from to water your crops and feed your family. So some of it, or a lot of it, ends up back into the groundwater, contaminating it. So that could be the case. And um, I didn't know. I wonder what he added to the water to clean it. The best thing I would recommend, and this is unfortunately not very feasible because it's kind of expensive. So I mean, I can't afford this. I wish I could, but getting individual filters that actually do reverse osmosis on each of your sinks, each of your faucets that you want. So if you want one for your shower, you have to have one for there. If you want one for your kitchen sink, for your bathroom sink, that's three right there. So, and you have to have filters replaced every so often by the technicians. Um, and that's honestly the best way to get good drinking water today, at least in more developed countries that have that option. And it's an expensive option. Otherwise, I mean, I just use Brita. Brita is decent. It's fine. It's good enough. Um, and I'm sorry that if any of you live in an area that is at risk for contamination, because there are a ton of areas in the US that are not doing great. 25% of the nation lives near a Superfund site. Not fun, fund. This means a site that has been identified as a source of contamination that they need to clean up. Many of these sites have radioactive components. Many of them have, I don't know, maybe mercury, arsenic, could be a variety of things. And the Superfund sites, I believe, are all, I don't know if any of those are actually naturally caused,
I don't
but I
believe so. I
believe,
think the
I don't think so.
qualification for a Superfund site is that
Yeah,
it has to be human caused.
right. So those are all human caused. And some of them are so old, some of the contaminants are so old that they can't actually even find a culprit anymore. They're just like, well,
Dang.
that's that. And so somebody else has to pay for it. But if they can find the business that did contaminate, then they make them pay for it.
They're super friends?
Um,
Super friends
super
site?
friends.
Super friends.
Oh my gosh, the memes I could make. All right.
um, uh, well, I think that we have two questions that people submitted that I would like to ask you before we move on to kind of transition to, I think, where you were going anyway, on why we have water scarcity and why it's a scarce resource
Mm-hmm.
and such, and why it matters and it's so damn important, you know,
Right.
which is what I think the most important part of the conversation is, if that's
Right.
okay.
Yeah.
Sushi, our illustrious moderator, Rabid Sushi, wanted to know, what is the tastiest looking rock? Not that you can eat. Which one looks so tasty that you wish that you could eat it?
Uh,
It's a hard one.
I don't even have all my specimens out. Oh man.
It's a hard question. Like, if you're not worried about contamination or poison or anything, not about. We have a giant chicken nugget looking one.
Well, honestly, it's gonna be one of the gemmy ones, one of the really pretty crystalline, clear, nicely shaped, because they look like gummies.
Yeah, that's true.
They all look like gummies. Anytime a gem looks like a gummy, I'm just like, oh yes, I want to chomp that. Like, look at that. It's like a little gummy. It's appetite.
That's
cute. Little gummy. Yeah. Marilite, this one isn't as gummy-esque. It's kind of, it's like it's got a like sour coating on it or something, sour candy coating. But it's pleocroc, which is cool.
Nice.
See how it's darker yellow along that axis?
Yeah.
And then this axis more like champagne.
That's very cool. That is very cool. Yes,
that's why I bought this one.
Amber does look like honey for sure. I don't know that there's any ice cream looking minerals.
I'm sure, man. Minerals look like everything.
Yeah, there's everything. I see so many like Twitter threads.
I'd want to eat one that's real spiky looking. It's people like, whoa, but it's like, haha, it's not dangerous. But even it probably is though.
I wonder if like okanite would be like, it looks like cotton candy.
Chrysotile. I want to eat chrysotile.
Why?
It's asbestos. It looks like forbidden cotton candy.
Okay, that's fair. It is forbidden cotton candy. That's fair. Fair. That is a very fun question. Chrysotile? Chrysotile.
Yeah,
I don't know. Potato.
I say things all different.
Quaternary. It's the same thing.
Chrysotile.
Wolfenite does look like caramel, that's for sure.
I have some wolfenite right here. Oh my gosh.
Ooh.
I got this at an antique shop for $30.
Nice.
Like, the crystals are just insane.
That's beautiful.
And then this one I got for $20, which is worth even more because these crystals are perfect and they're like that orange.
Yeah. Those are like, nice.
What?
Those are nice. Oh my gosh. Click on this link, guys. That's true. Okay, I would absolutely eat that. I would eat that. That's so funny.
Oh, I've seen the chicken nugget rock, yeah.
We also had a question. 3D Prima wanted to know, could you please make up a geology fact that is absolutely totally wrong?
Plate tectonics are floating on a body of molten rock. That actually isn't something I didn't make that up. That was in a documentary the other day, and I got so mad.
So why is that wrong?
Because it's not true.
But why? For somebody who's never had a geology class or anything, like why is that not what happens?
Basically, they said that plate tectonics float on a body of molten rock, and that's what causes plate tectonics. None of that makes any sense. So let me help you understand. So first off, the interior of the Earth is entirely solid, with the exception of the outer core. That is it. The outer core is the only component of the Earth that is liquid or molten. And even magma chambers are not entirely molten. They have crystals floating around in them like a slushy. So even magma chambers aren't completely molten.
Yep.
What is actually driving plate tectonics is essentially heat from radioactive decay in the primordial formation of the Earth. That is essentially the thing that is driving plate tectonics. Now, how is heat driving it? Through convection, slab pull, and ridge push, which are three weird things in geology. So convection still happens in the mantle, even though it's a solid. It's just more like a slowly moving putty over millions and millions of years geologically. So we can't think or even imagine that kind of movement or convection on the human time scale. So the heat is transferred through convection in the mantle, and that does drive part of plate tectonics. So plate tectonics aren't floating on anything. They are a part of the Earth. It's just different layers that are separated chemically and physically, depending on what you want to look at. Are you looking at the chemistry differences? Are you looking at how things deform differently? Then you would have different parts of the earth to look at. But ultimately, again, the only layer that is completely molten is the outer core.
Nice. Thank you so much for explaining that. I appreciate
Mm-hmm.
it. And thank you so much for the follow, Lucy in the Calm. Welcome. We are on with Rocket Sage. Go give her a follow too if you are not already. She is the OG geologist on Twitch. And Samara Faye and I have been kind of talking in chat about why the early earthquake warning system is not a prediction. And yeah, it's
Great
technically
question.
not a prediction because what that does is it detects the P wave, which means the earthquake has already happened. And then if there's time in between, like it detects the P wave, and then the second wave is the S wave, you'll get an alert before the S wave arrives if you're far enough out and things are
Mm-hmm.
working properly. But like sometimes you might get the alert afterwards, and that's because you're just too close to the epicenter. A prediction implies you know the specific time, place, and magnitude, and it has to occur before anything. And so the early earthquake warning system, sorry, which is active. I think it's definitely California. We have it here in Washington. I believe they have it in
Japan
Oregon
as
too,
well.
and Japan.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's just saying like, hey, there's an earthquake coming. We've detected it. FYI, take cover because even like seconds matter, as I'm sure
Yep.
Sage, you live in California, you know.
Yep. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. And the way I like the analogy I always like to give, it's like, well, P waves are faster than S waves. So if a P wave, if you've got a car going 60 miles per hour, the P wave, and a car going 40 miles per hour, the S wave, the further you go, the greater the distance grows between those two cars. It's the same with the P and the S waves. The further the station, the greater the time difference between the P and the S wave. So if you're further out from the epicenter, like Volcano Doc said, that's why you have maybe a little bit of warning before the S wave hits. But more importantly, I'm not, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but I think this also gives us a warning for the surface waves, which are the big damage causers, which are even slower than the P and S waves.
Yes,
So
that
that
it
I think
does.
is the biggest thing that they kind of prepare you for. Um, so that does, you get a little more time between the surface waves and the P waves, which is fantastic. But again, if you're right on the epicenter, you're not going to have much warning at all.
Mm-mm.
Maybe a second. like if,
Yeah, but I understand. You know, Samara phase. It's kind of easier to explain it to people, but I just really like to be specific about that. I'm very particular about the word prediction. I very much feel like
me too.
it causes a lot of misunderstanding
Mm-hmm.
in
Did
science.
you do you remember when Dutch Sense was around
He
on
still
Twitch?
is, I think.
Oh, I thought I got him to leave.
I don't know. I think they've got. I don't know. I just don't
He
even.
might have a different channel, but like when they first came around, when Science and Tech was like a thing, I would stream in Science and Tech, and I would get all these people from his channel be like, "Earthquakes, you can predict earthquakes, you can predict earthquakes." I'm like, "No, no, no, no." So I was getting kind of frustrated. So I finally like, there weren't that many people in Science and Tech at the time, and so when I would stream, I'd be right next to his channel, and I had, I have my like, if I go to my scene, you'll see if I go to learning, it has a big title. It says Earth
Mm-hmm.
Science. I know it's backwards, but it says Earth Science. And so I would always put, you can't predict earthquakes. And that would be in the big bold letters next to his channel. And eventually, I just kept going on. Like every stream, people would ask about it, and I would talk about it, and I'd make sure to. I would never say anything bad about Dutch Sense as a person, but I would say just the facts.
Mm-hmm.
They are not a geologist. They cannot predict earthquakes because nobody can predict earthquakes. Best seismologists can't predict earthquakes, and they've damn sure tried and are still trying in some niches. They're still trying to figure that out. So I was basically, he's scamming people for money is what it appeared to be. And I didn't say that part, but I said, he's probably, I don't know the reasoning behind what he's doing, but it is false and it is misinformation. And I would just encourage you not to support that. And he eventually disappeared after, I don't know, 6 months of that.
I mean, I think that's doing a public service, man. You really are doing a public service there,
I was just so
truthfully.
frustrated that, like, and I never got into predictions and stuff and whatnot, but it is an important topic too because it doesn't even necessarily relate to earthquakes. It also goes into flooding and how often can we expect a flood of this size to occur? And we have to use statistics. And sometimes people confuse that with being able to predict.
Mm-hmm. And Samara Faye wanted to know how long before a big quake do foreshocks start, but the problem is that you don't know it's a foreshock until after the
And
fact.
you
So like,
and like Captain Paul said, you don't always have foreshocks
yeah,
too.
it's there's no way to.
Mm-mm.
One of my favorite, I don't know if I have it right here. I have one of my favorite papers is called, oh no, I actually do have it right here. Literally right here. It is from EOS. It's 2009 paper by Peter Vermeesch, and it's called Lies, Damned Lies, and Statistics in Geology.
Oh my God!
And
Please send me this
they
paper.
literally, he was like talking about like statistically significant. It's not the same as geologically significant because they ran the data and found that over this time period, like yeah, I know I love this paper, Paul. Apparently, earthquakes are more likely to occur on Tuesdays, and but then goes through and is just like, yeah, this is bullshit. And but I'll have to send you a copy. But that's my favorite paper that talks about like why you can't try to apply these things because the Earth just doesn't care.
No, Earth is gonna do what it's gonna do.
Gonna do what it's gonna do. It is gonna do what it's we're circumcised. Oh my goodness. But the Earth is gonna do what it's gonna do. What will it do with the water that we have available for us to drink?
What was the first part of the question?
I said, since the Earth is gonna do what it's gonna do, what will it do with the water we have available for us to drink?
Well, I mean, there's the hydrocycle, which operates at about a scale of 20,000 years. So the hydrocycle includes, precipitation, which is rainfall, hail, snow, um, evaporation, transpiration, um, which is evaporation from water from plants, infiltration, which means water that goes to the ground, runoff, which is water that just runs off the surface of the earth into streams and lakes. Um, and this whole thing, and then of course, groundwater. It feeds into groundwater and aquifers, and those aquifers can create springs, which can, pop up and create little rivers. There's this huge cycle, and people, when we see rainfall and things, oh, it's raining, it's raining, oh, it's not raining, it's raining, it's not raining. It's easy for us to be like, okay, the season's going to be great because we got so much rainfall, or the season's not going to be great because we don't have this much rainfall, and that's an easier thing to see on a human time scale because rainfall happens so frequently. Whereas looking at the whole hydrologic cycle, we don't think about how long it's going to take for groundwater to refill or become replenished. We don't think about um, when we overuse a groundwater resource that we might be drying up streams and even lakes that they are feeding, or springs that they are generating. We might be causing the ground to actually permanently sink, and some of that space where that groundwater exists becomes permanently destroyed. Not all of it, but a good percentage of it. I want to say around 25 to 30% of that space becomes permanently destroyed with the compaction and the sinking of the ground as we suck more groundwater out. Um, there's a huge cycle when we tap into it, when we start taking these reserves of groundwater, that we're still going to have precipitation, we're still going to have rainfall, we're still going to have streams. In some cases, some of the streams are going to dry up in more arid places because they are fed by groundwater, unfortunately, and it's kind of this system that's tied together. The streams are fed by the groundwater, and the springs are fed by the groundwater. And if the groundwater sinks too low, they won't be able to um, come to the surface anymore and feed those things. Um, oh yeah, that's a great picture. So this actually represents the amount of land subsidence in 1965 to 2016, which ironically isn't that much relative to prior to the 1960s, because in the 1960s they actually saw, oh, the land is sinking and we're using a lot of this here groundwater. So they actually did pull back a bit in the 1960s. Unfortunately, environmentalists weren't looked fondly upon often during uh, during a lot of the construction of water, even through the, I don't know, probably today they're still not fondly looked upon. Um, they however, that being said, they've been making an impact, they've been helping. But there's another image, I don't know if you know the other image I'm talking about, the old one, if you happen to find it. There's another one that shows from like 1922 to 1977 or something, and it's just horrifying. Like, she's about two of her cover the amount of land sinking there. So all of that land, that amount of land has sunk. So it's about, what she said, 8.6 feet. That's the one. That's it right there. So 1925 to 1977. And look how big he is relative to the top of that sign. So 1925 is at the top of that pole. That's where the ground elevation used to be. And this image is, I always show this image to my students. I show it online all the time because it's just so impactful. If you're talking, by the way, Volcano Doc, I can't hear you.
Oh, sorry.
I
Thank
just
you.
realized.
Yeah, I
No,
just
yeah, I just
realized. I was like, yeah, you can look at this and see, you know, here we're at 1977, but now go over this picture since, you know, maybe at 77 it was maybe where the little metal bracket is. It's
yeah.
gone down even more now still, you know. It's
Yep, it's still continuing to subside. It might be the rate at which it's subsiding isn't as great as it used to be before 1977, but it's still sinking.
it
And
is.
that can be a problem for infrastructure, it could be a problem for the permanent amount of, so that we're essentially permanently destroying part of that aquifer. We can't get that back. So let's say we are able to recharge and refill those aquifers. Well, we've just cut 30% of that storage that we used to have permanently.
Weird.
So is it a quick ad break?
Yes. That's so cool. Hi, let's get takes just one brick at a time. Yeah, Planetary is so talented with his little Lego sets. Like they're just so cool. I love it so much, and I really want to like ask him. Like I said, if he can. So I don't. You've seen my thing, right, Sage? I don't know if you're looking on this.
Which
My Lego set lab.
no, oh yeah, I have seen that. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. So like that was made by a member of Pineapple Hoops' community, and he's just like he
yeah.
does that for everybody. He does that for like a lot of different community members, and it's just so cool. It's so
I think
cute.
it's awesome. Yeah.
He's so talented. He's so super talented. Cool. So we have some questions in chat. Me go over here. Hi, Fluorine Boron. How are you? So we have a couple questions in chat, Sage, that there's been a discussion between Jim and Samara Faye in chat during the break about how do we know for sure how far the ground has sunk? If the ground itself is going down, how do you have a consistent reference? Which is a really, really good question, I think.
That's an excellent question. Let me think about this. I guess you would use surrounding landscapes, the surrounding mountains, the surrounding features that aren't sinking, because, for example, the valley here um, is the Central Valley, where a lot of subsidence is happening, where this hydrogeologist from the USGS is standing. She basically, we're surrounded on all sides by mountains that are hard rock, which means that literally there's just this long, elongate, trough shaped valley that is the Great Valley of California. And that entire thing is filled up with loose, unconsolidated sediments that are on top of sedimentary rock. Sedimentary rock and loose, unconsolidated sediment is extremely it's easier to deform, it's easier to weather and erode, it's easier to remove in the face of weather, uh, which is weathering and erosion. And whereas the mountains that surround the valley are very different compositionally, they're different types of rock. They've solidified directly from magma and or lava, and they are subsequently considered much harder rock. So they do not weather and erode nearly as easily as the soft stuff in the valley. So the soft stuff in the valley is where the sinking is occurring, not where the mountains are. The mountains aren't sinking at all. So the mountains easily on any side of the valley could be used as reference. And in fact, they probably use all of the mountain on each side to determine, okay, what's sinking and what isn't, because they could clearly see the uh, the ranges themselves aren't sinking. In fact, they're technically still rising very slowly, but they are. Even the Sierra Nevada and the southern end of the Sierra Nevada, it's still uplifting for reasons that are still debated, that have to do with mantle processes. I'm happy to elaborate because it's a super exciting thing that's happening under the Sierra Nevada. But at least one of the theories that is, the last time I looked into it was the main theory as to why it's still uplifting. But the coast ranges are still uplifting, and but the rate at which the land in the valley is sinking is by far faster than the uplift is occurring. So that is my educated answer, my educated guess of an answer, because I don't know exactly how they've determined this, but I have to imagine that they're using features that aren't moving relative to the feature that is, i.e., the surrounding mountains. Does that answer your question?
It looks, I pulled up the paper. It looks like, yeah, they're measuring the elevation of this clay level relative
Okay.
to sea level.
Corcoran clay is exposed
Oh,
on the
okay.
sides of ranges,
Oh, okay.
so that would make sense.
So they're measuring like from.
Yep, the Corcoran clay is on the east side of the valley,
Hmm.
or west side of the valley. That makes sense.
So they're measuring like how, like where relative to sea level uh,
Yep,
that is.
because that Corcoran clay like barely crops out at the base of the mountain ranges.
Okay.
And I assume that it's because of what you said. I assume that it's at sea level.
I mean, I guess they're measuring like what's the elevation and then like what's sea level, because the sea levels changes throughout time, right? But we
It does.
know the sea level, we know what the sea level like in meter is, over time, and so you can
Right.
actually see, if you know what sea level is and you know where this is, you can see if over time, if things are going up and down at the same, then you would assume that there's been no
Right.
change. But if they're going like this, then you can know that, okay, something actually is moving and it's not just
Right.
sea level, fluctuating or something fluctuating.
Yeah. Sea level makes a lot more sense than the surrounding ranges because, like I said, the surrounding ranges are still uplifting.
Mm-hmm. Which I thought that was a stress response to. I thought it was truly a stress response to subsidence. I saw that like Nature paper, and that, and I don't
When is that?
a Nature paper, the stress response to that was a minute ago.
So they said that basically the subsidence is causing the uplift in like it's a
Of
stress
this,
response
yeah,
for both the Sierras and the coastal ranges.
yeah, by isostatic rebound,
Yes,
because you're.
isostatic rebound, but
Mm-hmm.
not. I don't think it's for that reason. I from what I read was
No, 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 isostatic rebound because you're removing the groundwater. You're removing the groundwater, so you're decreasing the mass
right,
overlying the
right,
mantle,
exactly. So
which
you would then
is.
have isostatic rebound of the valley in addition to the ranges, if that were the case.
I'm not
Right?
sure. I would have to think about it and like draw it out more.
Because if you're removing the weight over any part of that rock, all of that rock is going to isostatically rebound.
Yeah, which has raised the Sierra as much as a half a foot.
So the other theory that I've heard based on seismic tomography, and maybe they've put this theory to rest because it's like 10 years ago that I read this. Um, Basically, there's what's called lithospheric drip underneath the southern end of Sierra Nevada, where the root of the Sierra Nevada, so we've got the range of the Sierra Nevada sticking up, but there's still this heavy, dense root
Oh yeah, yeah,
in
no,
the earth,
yeah, like just like a
and it's starting to,
detachment because it gets
yeah, it's starting,
yeah,
yes, exactly, it's starting to peel off
yeah,
into the mantle and sinking. And there's seismic tomography that
yeah.
is the evidence behind that theory.
I don't think that they're
So it's not
mutually
like,
exclusive.
no, I don't think so either. I just wondered if,
I mean, the lithospheric detachment is very
is common.
reasonable. That happens in the Himalaya.
Right. So that was the reason that I understood, the last reason I understood for the Sierra Nevada to primarily be uplifting. I didn't
Mm.
know or think about
Oh,
this
I
other
see,
paper
I
that came
see,
out.
I see.
So I didn't
You didn't know about this.
realize, yeah, I didn't even think about it. I mean, it makes perfect sense.
Oh,
You
I
remove a
also thought
weight,
that I
the
had been
thing is going to
sharing this.
rebound.
I'll put this.
Oh, no, you're fine. Oh my God. Yeah. Can you share that to my DMs as well?
Yeah, let me.
Or just put it in chat and I'll grab it whatever's easier for you.
Hi,
Cause I,
Wanagi. How are you?
cause I can add that to my
There you
classes.
go. Oh yeah, it's terrible. I'll just send you this to you in.
Because now I can be like, oh, isostatic rebound
Yeah, I
isn't
sent
happening
it
from
to
one
you in
thing, but multiple
Discord.
things.
That whole thing is a link, guys. I'm so sorry. I'm queen of the long ass links.
Dude, I am too, and I don't. How do you be not?
Well,
How
you
do I not
have to
do that?
pay for a subscription, and my cheap ass isn't gonna do that.
I mean, neither.
Spelling checks out. Spelling does check out. But yeah, this is
I think that is such a cool. This is such a cool talk. That I love isostatic rebound. I think it's one of the coolest things, and I love lithospheric drip and delamination, and like I got so excited when I learned about that in my master's. Like, what this thing? I got so excited. And then on top of that, I never even thought, yeah, of course the weight of the water that we're removing is causing isostatic rebound. It's the
I
same
mean,
as glacial melt.
when it's genuinely like it's genuinely this drastic,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
and you have to think it's not just the whole, it's not just like over where that girl's head is. It's like this whole damn valley,
Yeah.
this whole valley. Like look in red. That is a mass, and water weighs a lot. Water weighs so
Mm-hmm.
much. So that's, you're removing a lot of mass there. Yeah, and it is a huge thing in the Great Lakes, Canada, because the glacier melt. Same thing. Water weighs a ton.
Yep.
I mean, not
That's
a
what I was
ton,
saying.
I
The
don't
the
know.
glacial melt will cause the isostatic rebound of that land too.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Slowly, but it happens.
Yep. Yep. Which also, and so when I get people asking me how climate change will impact volcanism, when you have volcanoes that are underneath glaciers, if
Yes.
those glaciers melt, let's say those glaciers melt, but the meltwater is gone, you may, depending on how much, uh, ha- depending on the mass of the glacier, you might have quite a bit of isostatic rebound. And now, if the volcano's just humming along, that's not going to be enough to change anything. But if the volcano is already pretty damn close to erupting, you might actually change the stress field enough to make it so that it's easier to erupt.
I hadn't considered that. Somebody asked me that the other day, and I'm like, well, other than glaciers melting such that they're not creating the phreatomagmatic interaction anymore, you might have less explosive volcanoes if the glaciers are
No,
gone.
no,
Like I was
it's
thinking Iceland.
if
I was
it's
thinking Iceland.
if it's ready to go. If
Yes,
it's already
that's
ready, it has to be like
right,
right
right,
on the
right.
cusp. So
No, all I'm saying is like when you have glaciers, you get those explosive eruptions with the interaction of the water and the magma. But if that's gone, you may not have that explosivity. But I didn't think about removing that weight causing isostatic rebound, and if a volcano is already on the brink of going, that could be
yeah,
the last straw.
and you're gonna get lahars and all that before that.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that a big lahar. I think I think you would have to remove a very significant amount of the volcanic like edifice, which is what we call the body of the volcano, Samarafe. I don't think a lahar would be enough to do that. Is your taco okay?
No, it's just my catty yodeling.
Oh, okay. Okay. Yeah, phreatic eruptions are the worst. Um, but yeah, I'm glad we talked about that because I know this here and
Me too.
the I the San Joaquin Valley, that's home to you. It used to be home to me,
Yeah.
and it's
Yeah.
really an important place where a lot of our food is grown. I don't think people
This water.
realize how
Yeah.
valuable the
Yeah.
the valley is.
And it's frustrating too because I don't know, can I get into some of the issues with our water in California
Sure,
that isn't necessarily geologically related? And
sure,
if you have other
yes, no,
questions
please.
that you want me
I
to answer
have.
first,
Let me see if I do. I don't think we do.
I want to make sure you're on time for your things
Yeah.
and that you have enough time for some self-care before you have to go.
Oh yeah, no, we're good. We're good. And feel free. Like I genuinely am in agreement with many. I think we share many of the same views.
Oh, yeah. So basically, I teach a class at a local university called Water in the West. And this basically talks about water in the Western United States predominantly, specifically in the Southwest. And we then kind of go into California at the end. It's predominantly, California towards the end. And one of the things, we learn there's this book called Intro to Water in California by David Carl. It's a great book, but it is a little dense, especially when it goes over the different canals of waterways that California has. You'll realize how very unorganized they are. It's like all the waterways and the canals that we've got in California look like somebody just threw a pile of spaghetti on a map and they're like, cool, that's where the waterways are going, woo. And that's it's a bit different. So it's a great book. It also tells you about the various crops because California has the biggest agricultural region in the world. California literally has the most successful and largest agricultural region in the world. And we don't just grow for the US. In fact, we export a large portion of what we grow here. The issue is, they're not family farms. They're not, people that have houses and gardens. They aren't really, it is not urban development so much as it is these billionaires, these handful of billionaires that have decided to buy swaths and acres upon hundreds and hundreds of acres of California land that they see as a commodity. They see our water as a commodity. They're like, okay, well, we're not from California, but they've got all this really nice water out there. And if you buy the land, you own the water rights. And that is currently what is the law in California. We didn't have any groundwater regulation in place until 2014. And even then, they call the SGMA, the Sustainable Groundwater Management Act. I think it's Act. And SGMA isn't going to be finalized until 2045 or 2042.
Are you
either way?
kidding me?
Nope.
This
So we got
is
20 years.
Insane.
This is why I want to get out of the state because these billionaires really aren't getting any. There was an article about a year ago, maybe 6 months ago, about one of the billionaires, John Vidovich, getting kind of slapped on the wrist with a potential fine. I don't think he ever even got slapped with a fine for overusing water when they basically said you need to cut back. And they're finally, as of like this year, they're finally telling these big billionaires like, hey, you're gonna have to start cutting back. Like, this isn't good. You're making us look real bad. Like, and I've actually got a paper pulled up about this that was published yesterday. So it's just like really good timing.
Will you send me a link in a DM?
It's just the SAC-B, but it is something on regulations. Where is it at? Actually, Moose, can you put it in chat if you're still here?
I think.
Sorry, I'm not trying to mod you.
It's ads.
Oh.
Yeah, no, I know, Deep
Let me
Earth.
see,
It's
let me see,
infuriating. It is absolutely infuriating.
When you tell me it's ads, I can just be like, bloop, la 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 la
it's okay.
la.
I don't notice. That's my
It
problem.
is. This is, yeah, I need to finish. I skimmed it this morning. Oh, thank you. Oh, Muga, you're so good.
Thank you, Muga.
So that's the link to the article I want to skim over with you guys because I've skimmed it myself. So these billionaires essentially back in, I want to say, the 80s or 90s kind of got together and decided like we were going to split up the water in this way.
Hang on one
And
second. Hang
they
on one second. They're still
Oh,
in
sorry,
ads.
sorry.
No,
Oh,
it's
you're right.
okay. They're still in ads. I just want to I just want to make sure we wait.
I'm the same way.
Yeah, no.
I'm the
Okay, we're
same
still
way.
in ads. Alrighty, we are back. We are back.
So we've got these billionaires and they kind of came together and they made the Monterey Amendments. The Monterey Amendments are very, very convoluted and almost impossible to understand and get through, but it basically privatized the water of California for these folks. And there's a documentary called California Water and Power: A California Heist that was made in 2017. Highly recommend watching this. And there's a lawyer who actually did try to go through the Monterey Amendments and figure it out and start putting these people on blast. And unfortunately, I don't know that he's had much luck, but I've tried reaching out to the maker of the documentary. I didn't get word back. So I'm going to actually reach out to that lawyer to see if he ever got anywhere with anything, but I haven't heard anything. So it's unfortunately doubtful. Anyway, so these folks are now like the Resnick, Stuart and Linda Resnick. They own the wonderful company. Yeah, the Palm company, the pomegranate juice, Palm, the pistachios that they did.
We used to live next to one of the palm fields, but
Stuart and Linda Resnick are probably the worst culprit because I believe they own the most land. They're taking the most water and they're growing the most water intensive crops for profits. And those crops aren't even hardly used for the US. Most of them are exported elsewhere to make money. So they're using our water and converting it to money from other countries.
Bro, I cannot so in Fresno, I literally my husband's house was by a palm field, but when we first moved there, I lived a mile or two away from Fresno State that has a pretty big ag program that I am very in support of because we need programs like that to, find better ways to farm with the future we're going to be facing. But I would drive past all of these almond and pistachio trees, and that shit is not any cheaper there. And I am indignant as a consumer because if I have to drive past that on my way to work, it should at least be cheaper because, the local people should benefit. And you're right.
They're not.
It's not. It's the same
They're screwing
price.
The local people because they're not only taking the water and just making money off of it and allowing land subsidence to occur and draining our resource for drinking and living and to sustain the agricultural essentially kingdom that we've built. We need to I think kind of constrain that agricultural region to what we actually need and stop turning it into cash crops. The only thing is that how are those big business owners aren't going to want to make money. They're not going to want to be involved anymore. So I don't know exactly how we turn into, okay, how do we allow these smaller farmers to continue making money by selling crops we actually need that don't necessarily make a bunch. So I think that's where I guess subsidies are going to have to come in, and that's an area that I am very limited in knowledge. So that's where I'm going to end that part.
They already get a lot of subsidies. These guys rely on it,
right? And somebody mentioned alfalfa, and yes, alfalfa is the most water-intensive crop grown in the state of California, and it's not just used for cattle here; it's used for cattle elsewhere, and it's also used for camels in the Middle East. So they are exporting the alfalfa in big quantities as well. Nuts and almonds, they're still being grown. In fact, the almond growth, you know how there used to be everyone was all about almonds and how bad and water intensive they were about 5-7 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that almond production has only doubled, if not tripled, in the state of California since then. So all of those people saying, hey, we need to stop drinking almond milk. We need to stop eating it doesn't matter because they're exporting them. We don't actually get very many of those almonds. Those almonds are going elsewhere. They're feeding the world. We're the biggest exporter of almonds in the world. alone, not to mention other nuts, Hyperlisk. And it's not good. It's really detrimental because they're just becoming richer and richer and richer, using more and more and more of our water. And then we've got things like um this article is actually the first time I've seen something happening where they're actually going after some rural areas. Now, I don't know if the rural areas mean agriculture, but basically, let's see here. So,
They might be
oh,
might
I have the
Oh,
oh,
I
I
was
have the
gonna say
wrong
like
thing up.
these might be water districts that service the more agricultural, like agricultural regions, which is why it's those
Right.
specifically those water districts. And those water districts just happen to tie to small cities because that's
Right.
how municipal utilities work. And so you
Oh
can,
gosh.
the way that this is phrased doesn't really, yeah, yeah. But
Doesn't do much.
I wanted to point out we have another geologist from a California geologist in chat, Dr.
Oh,
Hubbs. Yeah, he did his
Dr. Hubs,
bachelor's
hi.
at UCLA and his master's
Oh,
at
it's awesome to have you.
Northridge. So fellow California geologist, which is really nice.
I hope to see you in my chat because I'd love to chit chat. I'm always collecting geologists, so to speak. I have a role in my Discord where if you're a geologist, you get the geology role. So if, on the off chance I don't have a chance to answer something, if some of you guys step in, people know that legitimate geologists. Of course, Volcano Doc has the role, and Wanagi Ska, and a bunch of people here. Captain Paul. All right, so this article, I'm so sorry. I hope that was okay to say.
No,
I don't
no, no.
think
It's
about.
fine.
Okay, okay,
No,
okay,
this
okay,
is fine. It's okay to
okay,
say. I just want to, and I'm not saying I disagree with a lot of the points you're making. I was just I was saying like, yeah, it is talking about the rural areas, and
So it's for the first time I've seen this. Well, the cool thing is the sweeping new regulate. So there's new regulations in California specifically were adopted by the State Water Resources Control Board last week after years of deliberation. The arc of conservation in this state has been an incredible one. Okay. Californians know that conservation is critical. Yeah, but they don't know what's actually happening. Okay. Anyway, said board chair,
the
what this crisis is really a floor. The regulations taken a decade worth of work. Um, Okay, under the regulation adopted last week, the city of Sacramento will not need to conserve more water than it already does until 2035, when it will need to cut its water use by 9%. The same goes for Sacramento Suburban Water District, the utility that serves Arden, Arcade, and North Highlands, which will need to conserve 70% more by 7% more by then. West Sacramento has to cut back 21% by 2040. So it looks like SGMA is actually starting to step in and implement
mm-hmm.
some cutbacks. That's good. More rural suppliers face stricter rules, which is excellent. However, I'm really hoping this doesn't mean small family farms or people that just live in rural areas,
It
such as Linda
does
County
too.
Water District.
It does too.
It does. Okay, such
Mm-hmm.
Linda County
Yeah,
Water District and Susanville with 30%. Okay.
it's both. It's both. It's I think it's just because like those what I'm trying to say is that I think those smaller rural towns, if you're on city water and not on a well, your water is going to be serviced by the town's utility. And I think
Yeah.
in just from reading this and what I know about utilities and such, it's my I would say that this would affect anybody who's on a city utility. And if it's in a
Well,
district,
rural isn't usually on city utilities.
well, and if it's in a district, then whatever groundwater is within that water district as well.
Well, like wherever you own land, you own the water beneath your land, and if your neighbor has the money to drill a well deeper than you, they can drill you dry.
That's so fucked up.
It is, and that's why I was worried. Like, is it everyone in the rural community? Because if it's not, if it is, that's not good. It should just be these big billionaires because those are the ones who are causing the small farmers to become dry. Those are the ones that are causing the families to become dry. In those rural areas. It's not the first urban water cutbacks in California. No.
Shmermal, thank you so much for the follow. Yeah, you can own things until the government changes it. I thought this was very, very interesting. So I don't know if you have been north of Fresno lately. The last time I was through
Mm-mm.
there, and I've kind of known about this for a while. Uh, when you're north of Fresno, here's what is this? Oh yeah, the drive-in. North of Fresno, you have what is it? You have Maderas Ranchos, the Ranchos, and then north of that you have regular Madera. Well, I think it's before the Ranchos. I want to say there's this new development that they have put in, and they started putting it in maybe like 2018 or so. It's literally been named Iragosa. There's no water out there. They got to bring the water in because there is no water out here, and the groundwater here has been pumped down so much. But they're building developments where there's no water. It's just infuriating. It's just infuriating to me, honestly. Like it's truthfully
I mean,
just like infuriating.
they know that, right?
I imagine that the city planners know. I imagine that the people doing it just
So
don't
they
give a
must have an
flying
idea. Like,
fuck.
what are they gonna just make pipes, drill pipe?
I think they're just gonna make money.
But who's gonna buy? Oh man,
People.
my brain.
Yeah. I don't know where
I
they're
mean,
getting it from, Samara Faye. I really don't. I imagine it's from, probably one of these reservoirs. What's this, Millerton?
I know they said Bakersfield. Bakersfield was mentioned too. Water suppliers, Oh yeah, water suppliers in much of the Bay Area will see little or no required cuts because of its moderate climate and limited landscaping. Even though they're getting their water from Yosemite, by the way.
Well, yeah, they get their water from Hetch Hetchy Reservoir.
Yep, and they have some of the best drinking water. Subsequently, in the South State, urban centers like the city of Bakersfield will need to cut back by 25% by 2030. Yeah, we're gonna have to cut back a lot sooner than the others.
Yeah, and the same thing.
We are a big area of agriculture and land subsidence.
Yeah, the same thing is happening elsewhere too.
And I wouldn't be surprised if cuts like we're hit with another drought. If other cuts are going to be happening sooner, and these are just generic things that have been in place or that have been in place for now. They might change. Maybe they'll be bigger. Maybe they'll be smaller, depending on cutbacks we face here in the near future first. And I think that ultimately they're going to go after urban first. But I will be honest with you, the distribution of water in the state of California is about 20%, maybe 25% if we're lucky goes to urban, and then 75-80% goes to agriculture, which is a fairly standard number globally. That's not, don't freak out, be like, oh my gosh, agriculture gets so much more. Well, that's because it needs a lot more, and so that's normal. It's just we could actually mitigate and I think cut that number back if we're not growing crops to make money for exports as much. Exports aren't necessarily a bad thing. It's just that maybe we shouldn't be exporting things just to make money and exporting things that are genuinely needed as a staple. I don't know how we would go about doing that through the government, how smaller farms are going to be making money. That is outside of my wheelhouse. That gets into economics, and I really don't have a that's where my knowledge ends, is the geologic world. But that's my opinion. That's what I think. And just California is not the only place in the world running out of water. The Ogallala Aquifer, that big red spot in the middle of the United States that
Right
Volcano Doc is showing, that's the Ogallala Aquifer, also equally problematic. And I mean, look at how much larger that is relative to the orange one in California.
That's where I'm gonna get my water from.
I know, and it's there's a lot of agriculture out there, corn and wheat, and I don't know what else, but corn and wheat are the two big ones that stick out of my mind. And the further south you go, the worse it becomes because there's less rainfall in the south than there is in the north, and there's more rainfall on the east than there is in the west. So there's also there's that part to play. And then, there's other aquifers along the east coast. There's aquifers along the Gulf of California and north of that. And there's aquifers in the state of Arizona. And they are all, let's see, what is this color code? So groundwater depletion. So the number suggests, or the key is going over the depletion in cubic kilometers. So red is, of course, the most depleted. Blue would be the least depleted.
Mm-hmm.
So Idaho's looking good. So is the Columbia Plateau. Oh wow, the Columbia Plateau. That's where all the aquifer is there. That's funny.
Yeah.
You can see where the Columbia flood basalts are and that aquifer. That's funny.
It's because those I think overlie the Troutdale Formation. I think that's where we get our water from.
Is that sedimentary? I assume.
Yeah, it's beneath some basalt, some cap basalt.
That's so cool. That must be differential erosion, so everything else eroded around it and it kept those layers beneath. Cool.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Same thing right here. If you look at the Snake River, the track, the hotspot track through Idaho. There's your rock type. Yeah.
That's so cool, man.
But yeah.
The things that we can see as geologists, that's neat. We have magical powers.
We do. Do golf courses have purple? Jim asked a question about golf courses. Could they go after golf courses? I mean, golf courses do use reclaimed water, but they use it so much. They use so much water. I know
golf courses
in Redmond, Oregon, which is north of Bend. I think that there's a lot of golf. There's already quite a few. That's where the Hole 3 was, y'all. If you were here for the last stream before last, the Mazama outcrop that I found at Hole 3 of the golf course, which was hilarious because I was just like, I'm not playing this hole, guys. And I just like got up on the rock, and then my husband was like yelling at me because we were in the middle of a scramble. It's the first time I've ever played golf, and I just came across this amazing outcrop that has this progression at the base of what I'm pretty sure is the base of the Mazama Ash, and it's just phenomenal, absolutely beautiful, and that's my golf really experience. Cool. But
they would have completely not been interested in the golf and be like, okay, here's some rocks.
I made him like drive me back in the next morning and just like let me, like, you get everything, I've got my stuff together, and I'm gonna go and just drop me off the outcrop and come back. Right, I have my priorities straight. But
that's damn straight.
But I know that there's several golf courses up in Redmond, Oregon, and they were trying to do a new one. There was some big company was trying to have a brand new golf resort put in, and the residents tried to block it. If I have my facts straight, the residents tried to block it, and I think they did so successfully because the groundwater, the reservoir is being depleted so much already from the water usage of the golf courses over the years. You know, reclaimed water usage is pretty new when you think about like how long a fancy golf course has been around. They've been around for minimum probably 60, 70 years, if not longer than 60 or 70 years ago. I don't know when golf started being popular with white old men, but a long time, I'm sure. Like that's the stats.
Golf courses make me so annoyed. I'm just like, oh my god.
But yeah, like you have low water golf courses. That's really cool. See, I really like that. Smaller, no water features. Yeah, and
why can't you just make rock golf courses? I would go then.
Girl, because if the ball hits the green and it makes a dent, they give you a tool and you're supposed to fix the dent.
And your ball?
No, on the green, on the ground. If your ball dents the ground, the common courtesy as a player is that you use this little tool and you fix the dent in the green for the next player.
See, that's too much. Fuck sports. Oh my god. I'm just telling
you what this, because I went off on like y'all have so much money, you can't pay somebody to do that for me. Like, are you fucking kidding me? And this guy was like giving me this whole lesson, and I did not fix my thing. I don't care.
But you're not like one of the rich members with like the platinum XXX status, so
No,
you
I looked him
know.
in the face and said, "I'm sorry. I'm a poor."
You're like, I eat once a day. Can you help me?
I was like, "I'm a poor. I don't own a collared shirt." It was hilarious.
That's great.
It was fantastic.
No, but water issues and water depletion is a serious issue globally.
Mm-hmm.
It's happening in northern Africa. It's part of why desertification is happening in that part of the region as they use water. They keep moving southward because the desert keeps extending, and it's not just water use, but that is a huge part of it as to why desertification is happening there. And the last place I wanted to talk about is Bangladesh. Bangladesh isn't a um, unless somebody has any questions, and I'm just like, I don't want to interrupt.
I think so. There is one question,
Yes.
but I don't know that we can actually answer it. So Hyberlisk says they're a fan of this YouTuber physicist Angela Collier. Their favorite video from her is alkaline water with lemon. Is her TLDR claim that such a concept is bunk accurate? I wonder. So the physicist is saying that the concept of alkaline water I don't even know what I'm assuming it's like
So
makes you healthy. I don't know.
So does it have to do with the whole Gwyneth Paltrow thing? Like, oh, she drinks alkaline water with lemon, thus it kind of neutralizes the water because it's an acid mixed with a base, and is that what she's trying to prove?
I think that's it.
So I don't know much about that. I just assumed that Gwyneth Paltrow was an idiot because she's always been an idiot, and has provided a lot of misinformation in her sales, that do actually relate to geology. So I do know more about her and her shiesty sales than I'd like to. But that I honestly I didn't know there was a physicist that did anything about that. I don't know what her conclusion was, but I just assume I don't know the acidity of lemon, and I don't know what the alkalinity of the alkaline water they're drinking is. So I guess it would depend on that, and then you'd have to do some chemistry and figure out whether or not it's neutralized. But
I don't think that like one slice of lemon or however much they put in
no,
is going to be enough if the water
I
is
I don't
even basic
know.
enough to make a damn
I
little
know that's the
difference.
thing.
I
Is like,
just don't think it
like,
matters. I think it's all hype.
is it like a pH of 8, and then the lemon's like a pH of 3, and does it, and just a little bit is enough to get it to neutral? I don't know.
But then
Like,
you
does it
also have to
matter?
think about like chemical and mass transfer and rates of
Right, right,
diffusion from the
right.
lemon, and
Yep. How long is it
yeah,
going to take?
and our stomachs are acidic anyways. Deep Earthbound just pointed
They
out.
are.
So like,
They are.
I would say I would say Hyberlisk that they're the I would agree with the conclusion that it's pretty hokey and just a money thing.
Yeah. Did you know, just off topic, Gwyneth Paltrow is like, she has these like conventions for her store Goop. And one of the things you can do is have a lunch with her for $5,000, but there's like a 200-person limit. I'm like, you're not having lunch with her. You're having a lunch with a bunch of people, and you're paying $5,000 for that. Okay, like, all right, make your money. I don't like that lady. I just don't like that she sells things that are extremely overpriced for stuff that doesn't work. And I'm not going to bring up any examples, but there are examples
Like
where
jade
she's actually
eggs,
had
you put up your
the
lady
jade.
bits.
Okay, so the
Yeah,
yoni eggs,
yeah,
yeah.
lady
So
bit
that's
eggs. We don't put.
she had to
lady
actually
bits
have
up
those
her.
removed.
What an idiot.
She was like, had to have them removed from her website because they were it's not good to stick a rock up your
Lady bits.
yeah, it's not a good thing. That and jade isn't one thing. It's either jadeite or nephrite. So you don't even know which of the two you're getting. Jade isn't one thing. It's two different. It could be two different minerals, jadeite or nephrite. So what is it exactly?
Usually
Jade.
nephrite.
It's just jade.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that was and then yeah, she's a money maker. Like her candles are like $75 for little candles. It's just, just one of those
Yeah.
bougie shops to make money.
Mm-hmm.
Um so the last thing, oh, was that the last question?
Yeah, it was just the only one. Sorry. Thank
You're
you.
welcome.
Thank you.
I appreciate your good questions.
Well, yeah.
Uh,
Not me. It's the chat.
oh God, serpentine. All right, so Bangladesh. Bangladesh is a bit of a story. So we're back to natural contaminants. We're going to end on natural contaminants, I suppose. And then, I mean, feel free to ask any other questions about anything we've talked about. Maybe there's something I've just missed and wanted to talk about. I mean, for example, there's another example of cobalt mining, and the conditions are terrible for the miners. That is contaminating the um, groundwater and the soil with cobalt, which is killing crops, which is not allowing people to drink any fresh potable water. And these people are doing back breaking labor for sun up, sundown to make pennies, and they really can't get out of the situation, and it's really sad. So there are conditions like that where companies can come in and be like, hey, we need this material and we've got the money for it, and we can pay these people nothing and get away with contamination. And they do, because there aren't regulations in those countries. So it's a really, really sad thing that I want people to be aware of, because I think the more people that are aware, maybe there's some change that could be had. The best I can do is educate. I'd eventually like to get hands on personally in some of these countries and really educate people, and I don't know, help nonprofits that are in existence, if not even maybe make another nonprofit someday. I don't know. But well, TCAF is not a nonprofit yet, but it's in the works. And that's another thing. And then there's Bangladesh. Bangladesh has got a lot of naturally occurring arsenic in the Himalayas that they're nearby, and they have one of their main rivers feeds directly from the Himalayas into Bangladesh, and their groundwater is subsequently severely contaminated with arsenic, like by far more than California's contamination issue is. And it was bad because in the before the 70s or so, they were drinking superficial contaminated water. So this was like a lot of water that was contaminated by oh, thank you, a lot of water contaminated by or not, yeah, agriculture, not so much agriculture, but um, cattle cattle and things like that. So they were getting a lot of they were getting sick all the time because of unclean superficial water that they were drinking. So they're like, hey, the I think the UN stepped in, I want to say in the 70s, and said, hey, we're going to drill a bunch of wells. You've got groundwater. And they did that. And they were drinking this well water for, I don't know, maybe a decade or two, and everybody was getting sick, but in different ways this time. And the government just kind of wrote it off as leprosy. They're like, oh, it's leprosy. They just have leprosy. They have leprosy, and dismissed it. Turns out it wasn't leprosy. It's the arsenic contamination from the water. They didn't, I guess, test the water. And I pulled up another article from today. I haven't actually skimmed this one yet. It's just something I pulled up quickly just for some stats. Here, let me send it to you. I'll put it in chat. So this is an article I just pulled up um, from Euronews. Half of Bangladesh drinking water is polluted with arsenic, and climate change is making it worse. So I wondered if there had been any reclamation. One of the things they did is the wells that were the most contaminated, they painted red so that the folks there would know not to drink from those wells. Unfortunately, occasionally they still would, but the other wells are still so contaminated that they're, you know, causing quite a few issues. But the sea level, is rising. There's intensifying monsoon rains in the nation. The water disasters are a pretty big threat. About 49% of the country's drinking water, it's about 50% of the country's drinking well water, which almost everyone drinks, has unsafe limits of carcinogenic arsenic.
Here's the arsenic map again, Sage, and I also found a paper that looked at groundwater usage
Oh,
uh,
perfect.
throughout Bangladesh, and it looks you can see
Oh,
this right
also,
here, where it's like really intense, especially all in this yellow zone,
yep,
and down here
yep.
on the left. And then you look at the arsenic map. It's pretty.
It gets worse the
Mm-hmm.
further south you go
Yeah, I think
because
Smerfe.
that's where the
I understand that they're painting in red, but I don't know that like removing it. You know, you want people to be able to have like if they have no other option, which is not great, but like
I mean, it's like
yeah.
it does take time for that arsenic to cause lesions and sores and then eventually other I forget exactly what the long-term effects are, but arsenic is naturally present at high levels in groundwater in a number of countries including Bangladesh, Argentina, Cambodia, Chile, China, India, Mexico, Pakistan, the US, and Vietnam. But yeah, Bangladesh's problem with toxic contaminant dates back to the 1970s. That's where there was an effort to move away pollution from drinking polluted surface water, like I mentioned. The UN stepped in and installed around 10 million drinking water wells in the country, which succeeded in lowering devastatingly high rate of child deaths. So there was some success with that because not all of the wells were excessively contaminated, but
I'm sure surface water is quite a bit like the arsenic contamination is higher in surface water than in groundwater. I would
well,
imagine.
it wasn't the surface water. The surface water was contaminated with other like bacterial things, such that they were getting sick in those ways. And the groundwater was the arsenic contamination. 1990s, it became clear that water drawn from sedimentary rocks contained high levels of arsenic. 97% of Bangladesh's 165 million strong population still drink well water. Um, oh, that's right. So, almost half of Bangladesh's area has drinking well water with arsenic concentrations that exceed 10 micrograms per liter. Guideline from WHO, a team of scientists found in 2002. I think ours is 5. The US's limit is 5.
Yeah, 10,
Uh,
10 and below is in green on this map, which is like,
yeah,
thank you so
yeah,
much for the
10
follow,
and
Midway. Yeah, 10 and below
10,
is green on this map.
right. And then chronic arsenic poisoning can cause skin lesions on people's palms and feet internally. The buildup of arsenic in the organs can cause cancer. That's right. It can also be associated with cardiovascular disease and diabetes and detrimental cognitive development impacts in those exposed from a young age. And you have to understand too that they're growing their crops with this water too. So their crops are also contaminated with arsenic. Um, I'm
Yep.
not going to get into how climate change is making the arsenic poisoning worse because I haven't gotten into that yet, and I don't feel I can add much to it. But I did want to let you know. So basically, the situation isn't any better really.
But
So there's
can we transition to that? Would you mind? Would you mind actually transitioning to why? I think that and that would be I think be a nice place to kind of like wrap up for some summary questions. Why will climate change make this situation worse? And I don't mean particularly with respect to Bangladesh. You can apply this to California, the U.S., however you would like. But in what ways do you see climate change making water scarcity worse, or like how much water we have available for us to use
well, I
worse?
mean, the first thing I can think of is just evaporation alone. There's going to be more water in the atmosphere than there will be elsewhere in the hydrocycle. So the hydrocycle will probably become slightly different. I don't want to say out of balance because the climate has always changed. It's just the rate at which it's changing now is the problem, right?
Yeah,
So the
we had
water
an
cycle is
ad pop up.
inevitably.
I was snoozing the ad as
Oh
much
well,
as
wait.
I could, and like right after you started talking, it popped up, and I have been like
Well,
clicking
well,
snooze, and it wouldn't let me snooze it.
we can totally restart. Just we can totally restart that question. That's a really good question. I'm trying to
I
think
have
of.
egg in my throat anyway.
Did you inhale your
Egg,
food?
maybe.
I inhale my spit all the
Yes, I
time.
inhaled my egg.
I'm a smart scientist who inhales her spit and food and juice and waters and everything all the time. I also sleep, eat candy, and that's great.
I don't do that, thank God.
It's
Thank
awful. I
God.
wake up with the worst stomach aches. I'm like, what?
I would have, you know how during the pandemic when everybody used the like flushable wipes because there wasn't any toilet paper, but then we realized that they are not flushable because there was like fat bergs of like gross not things in the sewers, right? I feel like I would, if I slept eat candy, I would have fatbergs of like undigested high chew in my belly. Like,
Fucking high
I
chew.
love a kiwi high chew. High chews are so good. I would
I
have
like the
just.
mango ones.
Ooh.
The mangoes that are good.
I love high chew. They're so tasty. But yeah, I would just be sleep eating just like high chew and then end up with like an undigestible chunk of high chew and I
Like I
know
didn't
they're
I
so
didn't sleep
good.
very well last night, and I kept waking up to candy wrappers. I'm like, no, no, again, ah, like nightmare. It's like ghost candy wrappers. Like, ah, boo. I don't know.
Oh
I don't like
no.
it.
Oh my goodness. That's too funny.
So that's why, like earlier, I was like, hey, I need a toilet.
Oh no. Oh no.
I'm shameless. I'm very shameless. Just like whatever.
That's okay. Thank you so much, Jaded Fairy. Welcome. We are finished with ads. I had an
I
unused
love your
bidet
name.
you bought on a whim. Oh no. Those are.
So
I'm not a fan. I understand lots of people have preferences, and I think that it's good to have preferences on things, and that's one of the things that I do not prefer.
I heard it's cleaner though.
I don't care.
I mean, I'm used to toilet paper, so.
Like that's like it's like somebody coming up to me and being like, "Oh yeah, well this is like a 95-point Cabernet Sauvignon," and I'd be like, "Okay," and I get that, and I understand that you enjoy that, but
Does
I
anybody
don't.
even know the difference between all these wines? Cannot
Absolutely,
anyone even tell?
yes,
You can.
100%.
All I've, all I've never had fancy wine.
That I
It's
just
like
got bougie on
$20.
that.
Woo, woo. $20 is fancy wine for me.
Go, you need to go to Clinker Brick Winery in Lodi. Go to Clinker Brick up in Lodi.
Clinker brick. That's a cute
Yeah,
name.
they have
And you can just
such
taste it and spit it out, right?
yeah, you can go to a wine tasting room and you can just get a taster and
Because
they give
I
you
don't
little
technically
like
drink.
1 ounce ones and you can ask them for a spittoon if you'd like. It's all about the
Cool.
tasting. I mean, I
Does
enjoy
that
the getting
count?
crunk.
Does that count if you don't drink? Like
Yeah,
if you
that's
just do
what
the
professionals do.
slurp it and spit it out?
That's what
Is that's
professionals do.
I'm still not drinking, right?
That's what professionals do so that you don't get drunk if you have a large
Okay.
amount of wine to taste.
Yeah, I don't like that anymore. I don't like that feeling.
Yeah. No, I mean that still counts as a wine tasting. I don't think that I wouldn't be offended. You're paying for the wine, you're tasting the wine, you're having the experience. You're just choosing to
Oh,
not get drunk.
I just want to make sure it doesn't break my sobriety. If that makes sense.
I mean, I think that that's a moral choice up to you.
That's
But
true. If I'm not
I
getting drunk, if I'm not feeling the alcohol, I don't think it should be a thing.
yeah, I think that that's very legitimate.
And I think it
And
depends on the person
it
and whether or not they can handle that.
it depends on the situation. You're not going to be like, I'm gonna taste test a 30 rack of Natty Light and then just
Oh
like drink a 30
God.
rack of Natty Light but not swallow anything. That doesn't count.
Mm. Give me some Cane Cobra.
There's a time and a place.
Give me
Just
some Mickey's.
saying. Oh God.
Oh, geology days.
Yeah, just best advice. Just don't put the Mickeys down. Just put the Mickeys down. No,
Don't
there's
let
no
your
place for that.
undergrads peer pressure you into drinking bad beer.
Don't do it. Just don't do it. Don't do it. But yeah, we were sorry.
right.
So we were talking about how climate change would make how would or rather how will because not we're not talking theoretical here. We're talking of like this is going to happen whether we like it or not, which is the thing about science is it doesn't matter what you believe, it works. And so how do you see the amount of water that is available to humans and animals for usage. Um, how do you see that being affected by climate change?
I'm writing this down because I would like to think on this further after, because I haven't actually, I've taught a lot on climate and I've taught a lot on water, and I've never really connected the two. And it's, kind of bad that I haven't. I really need to. So this is an
No,
excellent question. I'm glad you've asked.
I think it's a good thing for everybody to think about.
Oh, I think so too. So one of the things that's going to happen and has happened is some water tables are so close to sea level that as sea level rises, they can actually cause saltwater intrusion into those aquifers, and those are going to happen especially in island nations that again have they're smaller aquifers, but they are going to become basically intruded with salt water, thus that their water resource is gone. So that has actually already happened and happening. Um, Coastal regions like California, we already have issues of saltwater intrusion, such that we're pumping fresh water into the aquifers next to the coastline to keep salt water out.
I think in Santa Barbara we have a desal plant that's under construction
You
because it's such a
and in Yes,
problem.
it was an old desal plant that they're, I think,
They,
opening up.
yeah, that was like decommissioned because
Yep.
whatever reason, and then,
There's
yeah,
an active one in San Diego that's been active for, I want to say, a decade or more, and there's one in Santa Barbara that they're starting to work on. So desalination is the thing we could end on because that's kind of a happy note. I like that.
yeah.
Um, but so as the sea level rises, it's going to be more problematic to keep salt water out of aquifers on the coastline of California, on the coastline of other regions as well. Um, Inland, it won't be as problematic, but we are, of course, using those water resources pretty dramatically. There's going to be more water vapor in the atmosphere rather than other parts of the hydrocycle. Glaciers are going to be melting, which means that the most fresh water we currently have on the planet is stored in glacial ice, which, while that could drastically change, maybe that glacial ice will become so diminished that now our biggest source of fresh water is groundwater, which is scary because, well, we need those. We need, for example, in California, we've got the California snowpack on the Sierra Nevada, which is slowly melting and slowly retreating and slowly decreasing in size. And every year we get melt from that snowpack down the rivers through the valley or through the mountains into the valley, and that does feed the groundwater along its entire path. So we need that melt to sustain groundwater as well as the precipitation involved. And so a lot of the sources of glacial melt that feed any kind of groundwater are going to be minimized drastically. So that is going to be another resource to recharging or refilling groundwater that we aren't going to have. Um, the Gosh, I don't even want to get into the AMOC. That's another topic, I think. I mean, the ocean is part of the hydrocycle. So, I mean, there's potential disruption of oceanic currents, important oceanic currents, because of the amount of fresh, cold water that's being essentially dumped into the sea by melting glacial ice, and temperature increases and elsewhere that are disrupting oceanic currents, such that we aren't sure what's going to happen when those and if those change. And I know, from what I understand, and this is a little bit outside of what I know, so please fact check this. But from what I understand, it is going to cause a lot more detriment than good. Um, and if you have any more information on that, please fill in, because that's about as much information as I have on the AMOC and the ocean currents. But basically, it's going to be highly disrupted. The distribution of glacial ice versus water vapor versus precipitation, where that precipitation falls, how often that precipitation falls, it's all going to change globally. And in some ways that we won't know until it happens.
So Samara Faye has a great question. Can we
Hmm.
capture this fresh water that is melting?
That I don't know. And I mean, yes, theoretically we could, and
Some.
I don't, some of it, sure. I don't know why this hasn't been a thing. There's got to be reasons why it's not been practiced. I don't know, but I've not heard of it being done. Um,
I think like when you think about like icebergs and glaciers and like the oceanic ice, that's it's fresh water because the salt sinks out when it
mhm.
freezes. So like that's why it's fresh water, but it's just going to melt right back into the ocean. So it is technically fresh water because of the phase that it's present in. I don't. I if people, yeah, have companies towed bergs to port for water, that would be one way to recover it. But I don't know. Neelf, have you ever heard of this, Sage?
Mm-mm, I haven't. It might, I mean, we might get to a point where that's a thing that has to happen, but I mean, it's probably not happening or not being considered right now because we don't want to,
It never
I
turns
assume
out
we
to be
want to keep
cost
as much
effective.
glacial ice as possible because it's retreating at a fairly fast rate, which is causing problems.
Oh,
So if we just
definitely.
start removing glacial ice in certain areas, it could be problematic, but in other areas, it may not be problematic. It just depends. And that's something that I don't have enough knowledge to give you a full answer on. That's just an educated guess.
Okay. Well, thank you.
That's a
Dr.
great
Hub
question.
Dr. Hub says it never turns out to be cost effective. And Neil
You've
said in
been
the
proposing how?
1870s, oh yeah, no, cost effectiveness is huge. I imagine that's precisely why.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Hubbs.
And then Neil said in the 1870s, ice cubes in San Francisco came from glaciers in Southeast Alaska. I
Hmm.
believe it. There's still shit like that that goes down. It's just that, like,
Well, they do that for
who
fancy
used those
things,
ice
right?
cubes? Like, who was
Yeah.
using ice cubes in 1870? I'm pretty sure it was like the Astors and like the people who were super bougie and rich. So, like, the people who are gonna be getting like glacial ice, like that, they're already rich. No, they don't count. They're not real people. They're the
Boats and bergs
1%.
don't mix. Yeah, they are. Like the guy's taking California water, making money off of it. Woo!
Mm-hmm.
Definitely not passionate about that topic.
You always wondered why you couldn't bring floodwater from the eastern and mid US to drought places. That's a good question. Samara Faye said, as a kid, I always wonder why we couldn't bring floodwater from the eastern and mid US to drought places.
Because it just takes a lot of construction and planning and a lot of tunnels, and it's basically like LA has done that. LA's built a series of canals and tunnels to obtain water from all over the place, from hundreds of miles away. And that might be a thing that we eventually have to do because California is not in a great place water wise. So my assumption is they're probably going to start looking north towards Oregon, but Eastern Oregon has its own issues. Um, the valley, it's got a lot of rain, but I don't know politically how that's going to go or whether or not or Oregonians already dislike Californians a lot. So we'll see how that goes. I don't know. They could go, uh, I mean, further into Northern California because that's where 2/3 of the rain in California falls in the northern part of the state. 2/3 of the people live in the southern part of the state, but it's really the
That's because
agriculture that
that's because Northern California is not California. Northern California
it's part of
starts
Oregon.
at
Let's be real.
Redding and it goes
It's like
south.
as soon as the Cascades, it's like, oh, that's Oregon.
Yeah, you're basically in Oregon, and that's somebody from like I've worked up there, and yeah, no, it's just that's just
No,
base.
I
It's
Oregon's my
basically
homeland.
Oregon, basically Oregon,
Oregon, that's where I'm from. Oregon's where I'm from. Half my life in
basically
Oregon, half of my
Oregon,
life in California. I agree. It is basically Oregon.
basically Oregon. There's apparently a treaty that prevents transporting water out of the Great Lakes watershed.
That makes sense.
That's awesome.
There are certain lakes that are protected. Mono Lake is a protected lake. Like LA does get water out of Mono Lake, but they can only get water to a certain level. It drops to 6,000 something feet. They have to stop pumping
Yeah, now.
because there's a land bridge There's an island in the middle of the lake, and if the lake drops too low, it exposes a land bridge that connects to the island in the middle. And there's this, it was actually a team of biologists that
Oh, some
got
endangered
this.
animal, and
There was an
so
endangered
man, how
bird.
come like regulations will protect some endangered like smelt, but not our
Right.
drinking water? What the? I'm
But I
sorry,
mean, it's
that's
a
just
step.
like
It is, but
whatever.
it's a step in the right direction. That they, it
I
was a bird, a
know.
type of bird that they're protecting, and foxes kept going and eating the bird nest eggs, and they were diminishing in population. So they're like, hey, we got to raise the level of this lake. Thus, there are now requirements for that lake specifically. But it didn't stop them in draining Owens Lake. But that was before,
That was
that was a whole
before
that's a whole
rules.
nother story I could get into.
That was before rules. Go watch Chinatown if you don't know what we're
Like
talking
there's
about.
rules now on water regulation.
I know.
I'm kidding. What?
Yeah. Yep. So.
Oh, it's California goals. Okay. State bird of Utah. Why are we protecting them here in California then? I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
Oh my gosh, that's so funny. You tell the story of Owens Lake to your students. Yeah. It's when you go
I
there
do.
too. It's crazy. It's the other like you see how big it is and you hear about like just the shit that went down during the water wars was insane. Like I'm
Yeah, Chinatown's a great movie. Um,
I'm curious if anything's like if and I don't know if anybody here is from like the Colorado or like Kansas zone, but like the what is it the Oglala Aquifer? Is that what it's called?
Ogallala Aquifer.
How do you say it?
Ogallala.
Ogallala.
That's how I've always Ogallala Aquifer.
Okay. Okay. Um,
Please correct me if I'm wrong in
no, no, I
pronunciation
don't
here.
know, and I say Beethoven, so like don't trust me.
Honestly, I don't really care about pronunciation anymore. Like subsidence, subsidence, like
Yeah,
whatever.
yeah,
Just it's the same thing.
yeah. So
Ogallala. Yeah,
yeah,
Ogallala.
Ogallala. So that hey, how are you doing, Sir Caffeine? But yeah, like I'm curious to see if any sort of like water war similar thing, has happened in the Midwest.
Um, generally, because the Cadillac Desert it covers a lot of what happens in the western portion of the U.S. and I think that it does cover a bit of that area of land, but it doesn't talk much about the aquifer there. Um, I don't know much about any kind of politics that played a part there, but I could definitely look into it. That's a really good idea.
Yeah, I was just curious. But I know like you teach a lot about water because it's very much, of great importance.
One of the things I'm trying to do is I know the class I teach is called Water in the West, but I'd like to petition for a new class that's like global water issues, not just water in the West, because I don't think people understand that this isn't just a California issue. This isn't just an Ogallala Aquifer issue. This is a global issue. Contamination, overuse, lack of water in places that need water. Like there's, it's a huge thing, and you could go like I could do a whole lecture on the cobalt situation. I could do a whole lecture on Bangladesh. I could do a whole lecture on the desertification of northern Africa. Like there's just so many things that could be talked about. So I don't know. They probably won't add it, but I feel that it's kind of, in my opinion, more important than just focusing on the West. That being said, I do also like the Water in the West class because it goes over the dirty, shisty politics that are involved, and it
That's
kind of showcases
important.
like, look, and it showcases from 1800s to nearly the present, and it's like, hey, what this tells me is that these branches of government they're talking about, and all the shisty crap and all the throwing people under the bus and the way people get into office and the bullshit nepotism and all this crap that happens, it's still happening today. And it's happening in every branch of our government. And that's one of the big things that when I first read the book, I was like, oh, because I wasn't really big into politics or learning about branches of government. I'm like, everything's corrupt. Like our entire system's corrupt. Our everything is not good. And that hit me the hardest. That hit me the hardest. And that's why I genuinely like to tell people really what's going on and how things have happened and why water in California is privatized. It's, you know, behind all these closed doors, handful of rich people made it so. And it's a sad state of affairs, but I think that we're not doomed. I don't think we're doomed. I think that I'm starting to see in the news that people, you know, are taking action against rural as well as urban, not against, but
They're becoming concerned about the
becoming concerned. Yes.
availability of
And
groundwater
they
in
and the
places other
fact
than
that
cities.
and the fact that they even slapped Vidovich, John Vidovich, one of the billionaires that sells water for
That's
profit.
huge. That is huge.
The fact that
They
they
have so
slapped
much
him at
power.
all, that they got him in the news at all, that he was, you know, and nothing eventually happened, but the fact that they're making steps towards that is huge, because they theoretically shouldn't have any regulation until 2042 or 2045, which is about 20 years from now. So I'm really happy to see that they're actually kind of making steps now, because we don't have time. We don't have 20 years. Data one from Bay Area.
We don't have 20 years. I wish more people would understand that we don't have 20 years.
Oh my gosh, I hate that argument. Southern Californians stealing Northern California's water. It's like, well, it's not actually that simple. It's not that. It's a lot more complex than that.
Yeah. Water wars are everywhere. Florida's fighting Georgia over water flow of the Appalachia River. I did not know that.
Oh, wait, I got to take notes of
The
that.
Apalachicola River. Huh. I did not know that. Yeah, DL Miller, I agree. Rich people being untouchable is truly one of the biggest causes of many of our issues.
Hey, thanks, Neil. I really appreciate that, Neil. I wrote that down so I could look into that too. If anybody has any other areas that they know of concern, contamination, I know, is a big one everywhere, but especially if you know, like, water wars anywhere that I haven't mentioned, I'd love to hear your side of the story where you're living. And you can always DM me too if we don't have time, because I don't want to take up all of Volcano Doc's time. But I'm always looking to better flesh out my knowledge of places in the world instead of just the Western U.S.
Yeah. Heck yeah.
LA is stealing everyone's water. That's not new, Samar.
Hyperlist said they find this enlightening and helpful, but it makes me incredibly sad. What can we do?
It does make me incredibly sad as well. I think what we can do right now is spread information and really let people know what's happening. And then we can get involved politically, and that's kind of something I'm trying to find out. What I can do is I want to contact the lawyer from that documentary and see what exactly happened and what he did, to see if there's anything else we can do, and find organizations that might be conservationists in terms of water. I know there are certain towns, like San Diego is doing a pretty good job of restricting the water use. Like, if you have water running in your street from watering your lawn, you get a fine. If you water your lawn from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m., you get a fine. Don't water your lawn during the day. If you have a lawn, do not water it during the day, before 10 a.m. or after 6 p.m. Otherwise, a lot of it is just evaporating, and you're probably damaging part of your grass too. So that's a big one. If you have the money, get a rock lawn. What are they called? A rock lawn?
Water, like a water drought resistant
kind of lawn. Rocks and aloe and stuff like that. Xeriscaping, thank you. If you can afford it, xeriscaping is going to be really, really helpful. You can actually recycle rainwater you can collect rainwater, but there are state by state regulations. So you can do your part and start to, like, share with other people, like, hey, I collect rainwater and these are the rules and this is how you do it. You can collect your gray water, which is water from your washing machine, your kitchen sink, and I believe your bath and your shower. Like, your sink's your shower and your washer, but not your toilet. And you can collect that. It's called gray water, and you can use it for your garden, I believe your lawn. So there are things you can do to mitigate the amount of water you use. So if you want to do things, those are some things you can do immediately. And it just takes a little bit of looking up, okay, how do I collect my gray water from this appliance, from this faucet? How do I how much water can I collect during rainfall, and where can I collect it? How do I collect it? What kind of tubs do I use? What size tubs can I have? And if you want, I'm happy to try to get information to you through my Discord or my own lives. And I can also give that information to Volcano Docs. So if you guys want to come back here, I can shove whatever information I find towards her as well. So both of us can be sources of that information for you if you'd like.
Yeah.
I don't want to overwhelm her. So it's up to her, though. That's up to her because she does a lot of other content.
I would say also, like, so Ningao brought up that, and I agree. And also, before I talk this, thank you so much for the raid. E to the 2i Pi is a math streamer and a fantastic person who is brilliant and answers every question with like seriously considers every question and addresses it with like respect and everything. So go give him a follow right now. Thank you so much for bringing your community over. I really appreciate it. I was going to say, I really agree with what Ningao put in chat in that he hates how so much of this has become what can I do when so much of this is why was this allowed to happen. And I would add to what you say, because I definitely agree with everything that you had to say and the actions that we can take personally. But maybe a more powerful thing would be to literally contact your government representatives.
That was the last thing I was going to
say, hey, this is an important issue to me and I'm your constituent. What is your opinion on this very important topic? And if they don't agree with your opinions, find somebody who like if you don't like the opinions that your government representative has, vote in somebody who does have opinions that you support and opinions that will help make a difference. Because the biggest way to make a difference is by voting. Vote for people who support science and that will fund this and that understand that this is an issue. And maybe even most importantly, refuse to be bought.
Yes.
Vote in people with morals. And
it's
think
hard
that
in the politician world.
I know. But I think that is, when we feel like we're helpless, yes, there are things that we can do individually. And I fully do believe that we should all be doing those things. But I also agree that a lot of this is the response has been caused by people who very much have more resources than we do and affect a greater amount than one individual person with our resources and reach does. So
it's as much as we do as an urban community, agriculture is still the big culprit in taking most of the water, and that's the deal. And there's nothing individually we can do except call your local government rep. And the thing is if the more people call, the more they're gonna want to do something about it, because they do not want to deal with all those phone calls. So blow them up. And we can find numbers. If you aren't sure how to find those numbers,
get Chad and JD to bring it up at a city council meeting. Bring it up to the counts. You don't know
that. I don't know how to do. I don't know how to bring things up to a council meeting.
You go to a city council meeting and you have time to talk because you're a citizen, and they have to listen, like Parks and Rec style. It's pretty dope.
Does anything actually happen at those meetings?
No.
So what would be, let's say a group, let's say 20 people. I got 20 people to go to my city council meeting. We're like, we need to figure out the water here. It's just terrible.
I think that if you did it over a sustained time period, it might have some effect. But I think that once probably won't do anything.
No, I didn't think once to do anything either. So I feel that calling your government rep would be more effective.
Doing it.
You'd have to.
But locals too. Local representation matters. Things start at the bottom, and so if you have a city councilor who agrees with, like a city councilman that agrees with you, they might have a greater influence on higher up levels of government than you individually might as a person. I don't know that, but I'm just guessing, because they're in the system.
So this is something,
Yeah, local elections are far more important to daily life. We have way more power locally than we do at the federal
Yes, I
level.
agree with that. Local
Absolutely.
elections are very important. So honestly, you guys have brought up collectively some amazing points about how we can actually go about making a change in a bigger way than just xeriscaping and collecting rainwater, because it isn't that will help. Let's say everybody in the urban community does that. Yeah, we'll save a lot of water for the urban community.
Yeah, it
Let's say
is.
we're
It's
out.
important to conserve.
Right. Right, it is. Like maybe don't take a 45-minute shower, maybe take a 25-minute shower instead, which is still kind of long, but you know, just like just cut where you can. Don't beat yourself up over it though, because really like
Yeah, we're a drop in the bucket, which
we are a
is
drop in the
still a
bucket.
drop, but comparatively
So
speaking,
I might even do a stream where like I call a government rep or a councilman and just keep calling different government reps and councilmen and be like, hey, what are we doing? What are we doing? What are we doing about this? What are we doing about this? Just to kind of show people what to do, how to do it, and get people encouraged to do it. Because quite frankly, I'm not going to lie to you. I have never called a rep over this. I've never thought to. I didn't think. I thought I was going to contact these lawyers and this documentary and see what I could do and see where they were going. No, no, no. I I honestly I really appreciate my time here today,
well, yeah, this has been a
especially
very
because
valuable conversation. I think for everybody.
I've learned today. Like I won't lie. I kind of avoid politicians and that whole world because it's daunting to me. I don't know a lot about it, and I've often felt that politicians are generally not truthful or very moral people, and I have a very hard time handling that. But I think that I need to get over that and start contacting. So I appreciate that you said that. It's something that I've heard to be done before about different things. I just never thought about it for the water issues. So thank you,
Well, yeah, of
because I'm
course.
actually going to be looking into this. I'm going to start calling. I'm going to start. I mean, I teach hundreds of students every semester, and they get passionate about this when I teach it. I'm going to encourage them to do it. Maybe even make an extra credit thing, like, hey, if you call this, and I don't know how to get
Just
proof of
say
that, but
call your representative and discuss with them whatever way that you feel about this issue, because you
yeah.
can't instruct on
And
politics
don't
and
be like,
things.
don't attack, don't
Yeah,
be rude, don't be,
you can't be rude.
um, yeah, be kind and be inquisitive and be open, because they may not be nice, they may not, I don't know what they're going to be like, but just do your best to be as civil as possible and to use healthy communication skills, because you will, at least you've done the best that you can do. So local elections are super important. Remember that one I did know, and that one I do actually do. I do vote on those. Um, Voting in general, I think, is important, especially for people like Volcano Doc said in science, and that refuse to be bought. That was in her words, and I really, really like the way she said that. Um, I don't know about going to city council meetings and talking unless you're willing to do it every meeting for like a year. That might be effective, but it would be a very slow and tedious process for you. So I suspect that calling your government rep or your city councilman will be more effective. Um, oh gosh, I appreciate this so much. I'm just so happy.
Yeah, start
I
with your
hope that I was
HOA
able.
as an experiment. That's a great suggestion, Samara
Mhm.
Faye. Start with your HOA.
HOAs are the gated communities, right? Or
It,
the
I
what are
mean,
they?
it's just
Homeowners
very,
associations.
yeah,
Okay, that's right.
yeah. Summer, summer,
I just live in an apartment, like in a area of town, so I don't have to.
I hate them.
I don't have. I don't think I've ever lived in one.
Yeah, not great.
They sound like I no. I think I've had some exes that had them, and I was like, oh gosh, this is why can't you have a car parked outside? What? In your driveway? You can't have a car parked in your driveway? I'm like, what?
Yeah, I understand their purpose for some things, but there's a lot of things that, yeah, yeah. Avoid
And thanks so much for any of my folks for being here today. I much appreciate you supporting Volcano Doc. And if
Yeah.
you're not following her, you better, please.
Well, thank you,
Now.
and thank you guys, everybody, for coming. And I'm really glad that this worked out, that we were
Me too.
able to get this scheduled, and I think that this has been a really valuable conversation for hopefully,
I agree.
I know definitely me,
Me
definitely you.
too.
It sounds like, and hopefully a whole lot of people in chat. We talked about some very important issues today, and maybe give you some ideas on things that you can do to make a difference and in ways that you feel might make the most impact. Awesome stream. Thanks. What great way to spend time while finishing up sample analyses. Well, thank you.
There's one thing. Can I end with
Oh
one
yeah,
thing?
yeah. We forgot to talk about TKF.
Yeah,
We
that's
did.
it. That's all I want to end
I'm
with.
so sorry, you guys. I'm
No,
so
Joe.
so sorry. It like slipped. I know that we talked about like you explicitly asked, and I was like yes, but I completely
Oh,
forgot.
I forgot until just now.
So yeah, so TKF. We have a TKF follower emote in chat, and it's this. I joined officially a stream team called TKF.
Yes, I need to add everyone
Fellowship.
to it.
Yes,
Like that's what I'm gonna work on today.
on.
Well, they wanted me to fix the mission statement first, but I was like, can we just add people and then I'll do that? But I don't know. I don't know. Whatever. I want to know what you think later. I don't know. I get excited. I get excited. So if I need to be like, no, I'll fix it first.
Yeah, I'd fix it first. I'd fix it first.
All right.
Doing the
okay, I'll do that then.
highest needs.
That's true. But the Knowledge Fellowship is an educational community that I co-founded. I want to say 7 years ago, and we basically house and showcase and shout out all of the educational content on Twitch that we can find. We are currently going through and trying to vote on a bunch of new streamers that have just come in, like E to the 2i Pi. I believe I need to add you. You're one of the newer folks on the list. I was trying to go through the backlog from the oldest to the newest, but I might actually go backwards from the newest to the oldest because some of the old stuff I've realized is not there anymore. So I don't know. I'm thinking about doing that, and I'm thinking about fast tracking it with some people. Just be like, hey, let's have a meeting. Look at these few people. Like yes, no, yes, no, yes, no. Like just kind of get them out real quick so we can get these on the list.
Yeah.
Because that list is like, it's stressing me out. I want it to be cleared out so bad, and I want to add everyone. But anyway, is there a TKF command for the Discord?
We have yes.
If you want to join the Discord, there's also the Google Doc that lists the streamers. I don't know that the Google Doc is currently updated because we are switching to a website where that will all be hosted there. Yeah, in the Discord it is updated. If you do join the Discord and you are an educational streamer, you'll eventually get the educational role. When you go live, it'll put you up to the top of the chat showing that you're live. It'll also shout you out in another channel. It's an easy way to find other people to collab with, to connect with, and we're always just trying to find more people to support. We don't ask anything of any content creator. We have assets if you want to use them. If you want to do a command like Volcano Doc has done, you can. It's not required. We just want to make a place such that everyone can find the education they want. I hope I didn't ramble too hard on that.
No, it's great. I have always supported the mission of TKF ever since I started streaming.
Yeah, I mean you're one of the committee members now.
Now, yeah. I think it's a wonderful group and a wonderful thing that you have helped to create. Oh no, we're in an ad. Damn it!
It's perfect timing.
Damn it!
I finished my spiel.
Damn it!
If there's anything you want to say about TKF2 that I missed or something like from a perspective I don't think about or whatever.
No, well, one of the things that I really, really like is that Mandrake, and if I had a damn it emote, it would be a damn rupturing, and I just don't think that you can see that scale of detail in an emote.
Yeah, I've got some emotes you can't see this.
um, it'll be socks Kool-Aid bursting through a dam. Um, but
That's a good idea.
I forgot what I was gonna say. Oh yeah. I really like how you stress that practical knowledge is just as important as book
Mm-hmm.
knowledge because it
Yeah.
really is.
Mm-hmm.
And I truly do believe that, like, you know, different people are good at different things and everybody
Mm-hmm.
has their place and their purpose. And I really appreciated that when we were kind of like talking through about what the mission statement was,
Mm-hmm.
that that point got brought up because
Yeah.
I think that most although I mean I agree with the statement, like, hey, you need to consider what the experts know,
Mm-hmm.
but an expert woodworker doesn't have a PhD,
Mm-mm.
but they're
Exactly.
nonetheless an expert.
Exactly. Yeah, we don't require degrees to, if you've got the knowledge to teach that's peer reviewed and factual, why do you need a piece of paper to teach that,
So
in my opinion?
yeah, and that's one of the things that I really and expert in that field. You
Right,
know,
right.
it's one thing, but it's another thing to be like an expert woodworker and
Right,
be
right, right.
talking about like primordial ooze things that's just not
Yeah,
copacetic,
yeah. No, no.
But
Like I would never stop going into this is how government's structured and works. Like, nope, not my thing.
yeah, yeah. Sorry, it was like ads. It's the Schlode of debt, dude. Don't even want to know, Muga. You don't even want to know. Lowhead dam drowning warning sign instead. Oh my goodness. Okay. Well, I think Sage. Let's say farewell. I am also going to pop off. I have an appointment this afternoon
Yeah,
that I have to go
don't
to.
miss your
So,
appointment. You've got 38 minutes.
oh no. What we also really need is complete P and S wave distribution analysis arrival data for all earthquakes that isn't readily available in most public catalogs. I think you can download stuff like that from Iris, but I don't work enough with that to know.
I don't either. But Iris would be the go-to for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, thank you all so much for coming. I really really appreciate it. This was very fun. Really glad that we made this happen finally, and really glad
We
to.
gotta we gotta do it again, and I need to get you on my channel now that I like kind of.
Yeah,
I was real
the
nervous.
guest star is not so bad. It's not so
No,
bad.
I like it.
It just takes a little bit, but
I think
that's all.
I think I'm gonna start using it. I actually really like it because I can still use my virtual camera from OBS.
Yeah, there you go.
So
There
it
you
works.
go.
It works. Guys, thank you so much for having me.
Yeah.
Volcano Doc, thank you so much for having me. This was an excellent. I had an excellent time. Anytime you want me back, I'm here, and I will definitely
Yeah.
be more on top of things next time.
No, no, no. We're
And
not doing that. We're not doing. No worries. No worries. No worries.
I
We are all
appreciate that.
adults. We're all
Life has been a
adults.
little,
We've got
yeah.
hectic lives. We got hectic
We do,
schedules.
we do. I try to be as respectful of everyone's time as I possibly can, and I know how busy you are, and I appreciate everything you do for the geosciences.
Thank
And
you.
I'm looking forward to having you on my channel next. I just need to figure out what my schedule is going to be as
Uh,
I'll figure it out and I'll DM you. It'll probably be a couple months.
oh, that's fine. I believe I'm not debate. Yeah, my life is changing, guys. I'm moving in 2 weeks from today. 2 weeks from today.
Anything I can send you to help? Do you need?
Mineralogy course, an intro course, all of the
I wish.
things.
I could try to get that from my friend if you like.
I will genuinely take whatever. If you're in chat and you got a mineral, I'm dying.
No, I could actually ask her for that. She's always been really like giving on things and be like, hey, I just
Yeah.
to brush up on my knowledge, and I have a friend that needs an intro to things because I wouldn't mind it to brush up on my knowledge.
Yeah, it's mostly like the syllabus kind of structuring out and then lecture slides and
Because
things.
lectures take forever to write.
Dude, I know.
Like a single lecture takes like 6 to 8 hours because I have to make everything nice and perfect, and it just, you know, it's not great. It's like making a bunch of little talks.
I'm just gonna write on a chalkboard, yo.
Do you have chalkboards?
I will buy one so that I can do that.
Just do the nails when you get mad, like, shut up, everyone.
Just write out every word that I want to say. No, I'm not gonna do that.
Yeah.
Oh my god, Deep Earth, that would be amazing. I've got a couple from undergrad, but like,
You know that I was even writing lectures for Twitch. I'm like, nah, I'm not doing this anymore. It was taking so much time. I couldn't. I
no.
was burning out. I was like,
Yeah, don't no. Too much.
I was doing way too much, man.
Too much. So
I need to get
well,
some food.
yes. Thank you so much, Sage. I will.
Thank you so much,
Here, I'm
Buddha.
gonna